A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are back with yet another exciting session of Internal Audit Standard Board on technology as an enabler of internal audit process. I have with me Shri Pitachi Mahalingam, who is the internal audit head of Federal Bank. I have with me Mr. Niraj Kumar, internal audit head of Oyo Hotels. I have with me CA Sandeep Jangra, who is the chairman of Bhiwani branch. I have with me CA Iqbal Singh Grover, who is the past chairman of Amritsar branch and coordinator of today's session. Over to Iqbalji for your further proceedings. The dice is all yours now.
Thank you so much, Nanda sir. I welcome all the members to this virtual CPE meeting on technology as an enabler of internal audits, being organized by Internal Audit Standard Boards and being hosted by the Bhiwani branch of NIRC of ICAI. This is again a weekly meeting and one of the meetings that we conduct on every Saturday. First of all, I will request the chairman of Bhiwani branch, Sandeep ji, to kindly give his opening remarks.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the webinar of Technology as Enabler of Internal Audit, organized by Internal Audit Standard Board of ICAI, hosted by Bhiwani branch of NIRC of ICAI. I welcome CA Charanjot Nandaji, CCM, and Chairman of Internal Audit Standard Board, CA Anil Bhandariji, CCM, and Vice Chairman of Internal Audit Standard Board, CA Iqbal Groverji. I welcome to all executive members of Bhiwani branch of NIRC, CA Andy Gupta ji, Vice Chairman, CA Sachin Goel ji, Secretary, CA Rajesh Tawal ji, Executive Members, and CA Tarun Mittal ji, Treasurer of Bhiwani branch, along with all members who joined this webinar. I am really thankful to host this webinar under Bhiwani branch of NIRC. Here is the agenda for today's webinar. First one is use of technology in internal audit by CA Niraj Kumar ji. He is Global Head, Internal Audit, Fraud and Risk, Oyo Hotel and Homes. Second one is Reimagining Internal Audit of Banks by Mr. Pichai Mahalingam ji. He is Head of Internal Audit, Federal Bank. Third one is Fraud Risk Management by Mr. B. Govindaraju ji. He is Chief Internal Audit, MRF Tires. After that, question answer sessions. Now I request CA Charanjot Nandaji and CA Iqbal Grover ji to start this attractive webinar.
Thank you so much, Sandeep ji. First of all, members, we'll be listening to the keynote address of Nanda sir. But before that, let me introduce him to all of you, even though he is a man who does not need any introduction at all. Nanda sir is a lighthouse of knowledge and energy. He's a Central Council member for the term 2019-22 of ICAI, and this happens to be his fourth term of 3 years each. He's the founder chairman of Internal Audit Standard Boards of ICAI. Currently, he's also the chairman of Committee on Management Accounting of the ICAI, vice chairman of Continuing Professional Educational Committee of ICAI. He's also a member on the board of 26 different committees of ICAI, which is a great achievement. He's a member, and he was a member and later the chairman of NIRC in the early 2000s. And not just ICAI, he's also got a stint with the Government of India when he was appointed as a member of the Quality Review Board. And there are a lot more achievements, but because of the paucity of time, I'd stop here, and I would request Nanda sir to start with his keynote address.
Thank you, Mr. Grover, for your kind words. I am equally honored to be here amongst all the participants. It is really a great opportunity which I get every week to speak to you. Let me tell very candidly that the board is very keen to ensure that we give the best to our members. Way back in 2004, I founded this board. And last year, our theme was empowering small and medium practitioners. And this year, our theme is technology as an enabler of internal audit process. I'm very keen that we all can work in tandem with the ideas laid down by the greatest of thought processes. People can set up their practices only once they start understanding how they have to move ahead. We have all to be in friends with people who help us empower our thought process. I'm reminded of a couplet which I shall share with you. The couplet says, दोस्ती करो तो ठहरे हुए दरियाओं से करो, बदमिजाज लहरों का क्या पता कहां ले जाकर छोड़ दे. Be friends with people who can give you more knowledge, empower you to grow in your practice. Practice is totally changing. You are aware that GST audit has gone, the tax audit limit for non-cash cases have gone up to 10 crore rupees. Apart from that, you are seeing the bank audits also. So largely, if you want to be established in the profession, you need to have the thought process of creating value by honing up your technical skills. Give me a second. Before that, I would like to put my PPT in place. Give me a second. Is my PPT visible, sir?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
So I will just start with my keynote address. Today's full seminar of 3 hours deals with use of technology in internal audit, the first topic. Second, reimagining internal audit in banks. The third is fraud risk management. The first session, use of technology in internal audit, is again a very pertinent and a very contemporary topic. Why to use technology? We use technology because it has more coverage, even 100% coverage. We don't need samples. Second, analytics is the biggest advantage when the data is given and we use technology to draw the inferences. We get best of the inferences, and that too in no time. More importantly, with this, we are able to find early warnings of fraud, early warnings of disruption, early warnings of supply chain managements. And we have the best use of knowledge, because when we get so many inferences, and internal audit essentially is a management function, we report to the board or to the audit committee, and we are well equipped and we can best use the knowledge. Now, technology used by internal auditor. First is cloud computing. When you speak of cloud computing, you speak of SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. What is SaaS? SaaS is software as a service. This is for people who are not software engineers, for people like us who are not technical, but we have the mindset to give it to the public at large. Second is PaaS. PaaS is platform as a service. In this service allows customers to provision, instantiate, run and manage a modular bundle of information. We can use that. And third is IaaS. IaaS is infrastructure as a service, which provides high-level APIs used to deference of various undue network infrastructures. So it creates physical computing, resource location, and data partition wherever we require. Cloud computing also creates virtual desktops. You're sitting in your office and you may be sitting in US, but you can access the data and work on that. Anytime, anywhere, Google Cloud. And disaster recovery, that is the best part. You remember when there was a twin attack on Twin Towers in US? At that time, Nasdaq was housed in those towers. Nasdaq went out of function, but next day morning it was again functional because of disaster recovery. The second technology is robotic process automation. Endless examples in operations, finance for repetitive and administrative tasks, payment, reconciliation, data input, validation, copy, paste. I recollect that 2 years back I was in an IA conference in Anaheim, Los Angeles, and there I saw robots as cheap as 6 to 8,000 rupees in Indian rupees, and they could do the entire accounting function, account payments, reconciliation, validation. They can do everything, and that is error free. They don't want holidays on Sundays. They don't have wives with whom they may try to argue. They don't have any religious holidays. And third is big data analytics, customer analytics. We do analysis of whatever we have. Operational efficiencies, productivity, fraud prevention, one of the greatest idea. And third and most important is functional analysis, where you understand the trend, the pattern, and you are effectively able to advise the board how it has to move ahead. Technology used by internal auditor going forward, it is blockchain. Now, what is blockchain? Payments, that is by way of cryptocurrencies. Settlement, clearance, trade finance. I'll give a small example of blockchain. I want to adopt this. I want to take care of her education. The best thing which I can do is, I'm sorry, somebody's system has to be put on mute. There is some disturbance coming. So I want to help a small girl child. So if by blockchain, I can have a report of every rupee which I spend. So blockchain will help me in that tandem. Artificial intelligence and machine languages, chat box, next best conversation, robo advisors, algorithm trading in markets is a big hit. You have to just set a system and it will trade totally in the market and create value and worth for you. Fraud detection, very, very important. AI in income returns, they derive out all frauds or inconsistent transactions. Third, it's other which is drones, robotics, 3D printing, AR, VR, because you have security and asset management. That is very, very important. And drones, robotics helps us in this. Manufacturing or shop floor, gaming, tourism. So they add value to the entire initiative of the board or to the audit committee where we are. The session 2 by Mr. Mahalingam is on reimagining internal audit in banks. What is the audit process in banks? You are all aware. We do substantive and compliance testing. We do verification of tests as well as controls. We determine the weaknesses of controls and report that. We do verification of system generated reports, exception reporting, generation of special purpose reports based on exception logic through the use of SQL. And we ultimately try to solve them out why that had occurred. Collection of data from CBS to verify number and nature of transactions proceeded during a period. So we are able to focus on loopholes, focus on control weaknesses, and we are able to comment on that. What are the audit tools of technology? CAT, computer assisted audit techniques, spreadsheets, query languages like SQL. SQL again gives you a thought process wherein you are able to have the data and you are able to effectively analyze it for the purposes as is suited by you. The third section is on fraud risk management. Now, what is fraud risk management? First, create awareness. Yes, every organization is prone to frauds. A fraudster is always intelligent than any person who is working there. Second, prevention of fraud. If there is a fraud occurring, it needs to be mitigated. Otherwise, the system has to be foolproof so that it is prevented. Just once it is detected, then one has to go for investigation. Now, how do you identify frauds? First, you identify areas which are prone to fraud, which are the weaker areas. I'm reminded of a idiom which says that a chain can never be stronger than its weakest point. Second, assist in designing new controls to prevent frauds. Yes, new controls, immediate getting in and ensuring that the weakness is not again reinstated, not against reoccurring. Detecting existing frauds and suggesting its corrective actions. Whatever frauds are detected, corrective actions so that it is not repeated in future. Testing existing controls and suggesting actions to fill gaps which will allow a fraud to perpetrate in the organization. You have to suggest actions to fill the gaps. The entire process has to be so synchronized, so error-free, so fraud-free that you are able to work in that tandem. Now, what are the effects of fraud in organization? First, existence of fraud in an organization is like a termite which makes an object hollow from inside while it appears to be intact from outside. Everything is drawn, the wealth and values driven out, which is mostly undesirable and may lead to the collapse or perish a company which is working at top gear. A fraud can cause all the profits of an organization drain away. In order to protect itself against frauds, an organization needs to exercise due diligence in its daily operations, identify controls, weaknesses, and ensure that they are totally put in the right direction. Now, fraud risk management. What do? You identify, assess, and manage fraud risk from all sources. You have a fair idea where fraud could occur and you try to plug that. Support fraud risk management initiatives by establishing an anti-fraud culture and promoting fraud awareness throughout the organization. Anti-fraud culture is the buzzword. Every person who notices a fraud will immediately come back and inform the management. And if management is involved, they can go for a whistleblowing technique where the fraud is totally brought to the notice of all people who are concerned. Develop a system of internal controls to address the entity's fraud risk. All fraud risk needs to be plugged. Internal controls will ensure that things move in the right direction, systems in place, designed such controls that things move ahead. Address and respond to any identified instance of fraud. A culture which is not pardonable if any fraud is detected, that needs to be equally addressed so that people understand that it is an area where venturing may be dangerous. So, ladies and gentlemen, this was my PPT on. Just give me a second, I'll come back. So, this was my small PPT. Now, going ahead, I would like to just suggest all my participants here, we are close to 2,000 participants today joining here. I would request you all to kindly suggest the board any of any other topic of value which you want to take. The board is totally inclined, totally passionately involved in giving you best of the speakers all across the globe. Not only India, we are keen to get international speakers as well. So you have to tell us the areas where you want us to be involved, and more importantly, getting closer to the board if you feel that you have missed some of the programs. Last year, I told you our theme was empowering SMPs. Any video you want, we can send across the video. You can go and see them yourselves also on ICAI TV. We have to come to an era where our thought process helps us move ahead. Now, coming on to the system nowadays, you are aware that the entire thing is, the entire country is in a doldrum. We are all in lot of tension because of deaths of so many chartered accountants. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I was so depressed because I've seen so many chartered accountants leave to heavenly abode after due to untimely demise. Things have been so, you can say, painful, but still we have to come back from it. There is a saying, बिगड़ा है वक्त का मिजाज जरा कल सुधर जाएगा, बिगड़ा है वक्त का मिजाज जरा कल सुधर जाएगा, बीता साल भी गुजरा है ये साल भी गुजर जाएगा. So it is our faith, our strength. That is why we are holding so many webinars, so that you are attuned and you are totally involved in honing your technical skills, which will help you professionally in times to come. Your board is like a guide to you. Your elder brother Charanjit Singh Nanda, whenever you need me, I am only at your beck and call. My numbers are there on ICAI.org. You can always call me, ping me, write a message to me, mail me. We are always there to serve you. The board has one pledge that we have to ensure that every chartered accountant in the country works to the tandem so that the flag of the institute flies at unprecedented heights. So I want to thank you all for giving me patient hearing. We have our next speaker, Niraj, in a red t-shirt. Great. A relaxing moment. Working at home has its own perils, yet it has its own advantages. So let us listen to the words of wisdom of Mr. Niraj Singh. I now hand over the dais to Mr. Iqbal Singh for his further proceedings. Mr. Grover, the dais is all yours now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. You've beautifully laid down the foundation for today's evening. Before we move forward, I would like to thank on behalf of all the members to Nanda sir, thank you, and all the council members for increasing the CABF expenditure limit to 10 lakhs from that returned income level to 10 lakhs from 3 lakhs. It's a great initiative by ICAI, and I'm sure it will help a lot of members to use this facility for themselves and for their families.
I would
moving forward,
I added one thing, Iqbalji, because it is a issue on which I get so many questions. Earlier, your dependents should not have any income. For example, if X has a salary of 8 lakh rupees and his father, mother are dependent, but they have income, say, of 20,000 rupees, 50,000 rupees bank interest or some small rent. So now the condition for 26th April is that if the income of the entire family put together, for husband is there, he has 2 dependent parents. If their total income is less than 10 lakh rupees, all will be covered and will have the benefit of 1.5 lakh rupees if they are hospitalized or otherwise. The institute is totally, the Benevolent Fund is totally attuned to ensure that in this time of distress, there is no problem to our fellow chartered accountants. Thank you so much. Iqbal, you can take a hand.
Thank you so much, sir, for clarifying that. Members, now it's time to listen to Mr. Niraj Kumar, who will be speaking on use of technologies in internal audit. But before that, let me first introduce him to all of you. Niraj is a chartered accountant having 20 years of experience in risk management, internal auditing and insurance, fraud management, revenue assurance, business processes, design, internal control and SOX compliance. He is currently Global Head of Internal Audit, Fraud and Risk for OYO Group, which is spread in more than 50 countries. Before joining OYO, Niraj was Executive Director with KPMG Risk Consulting Vertical and was lead to various marquee companies. He also led internal audit function and has worked with various multinational and big Indian conglomerates like Carrefour India, Walmart India, Max India, Reliance Retail, etc. During his 2 tenures as a consultant, he has provided services to various international and national companies having interest in retail, e-commerce, hospitality, manufacturing, media, airlines, BPO, etc. There's a lot more to his profile, but because of paucity of time, I will request Niraj ji to start with his deliberation.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Iqbalji, for nice introduction. Thank you, Nandaji. You always make our job easier by setting a right context, and at the same time tougher also by setting a high standard. I wish everyone good health. Please take care of yourself, And thank you for organizing such an event and seminar, knowledge seminar, which will keep all of us going during such a tough time. It will be really refreshing. Topic for me is technology, by use of technology by internal auditor. I have named it as a technology as an enabler for internal audit. First of all, I am not the expert. I am one of the learner like you, and I am learning on the job. I will try to make it practical also. So some theory, and then there are two parts. Why control automation required? What kind of technology internal auditor can use? How data analytics can help them? What are the challenges, and how it is going to help us, right? How it is going to add value and bring efficiency in overall ecosystem. Nowadays, a lot of focus is on the automation of control environment by the company and suggested by internal auditor also. Why these are there? There is an increased reliance on the automated control. We all know that automated control works better than the manual control. Preaching is much difficult than preaching the manual controls. Higher adoption of process automation for critical business areas. Specifically, the critical areas are first automated. A lot of new technology has come in. You can see various companies, not only technology company, e-commerce, startup, but all the companies are now moving towards using artificial intelligence, machine learning, RPA. You would find a lot of your within a company, like your HR, your leave, everything are going on the app now. Automated control environment can optimize the time spent for looking for the information for audit. Much better utilization of people. It's bring a lot of efficiency. What you do manually, if it is done through technology, both for the organization and for the auditor, it is highly optimizing the resources. It is very useful in eliminating the frauds, which Nandaji has already touched upon. I will go little detail in the later part of the program. It improves business process. It removes a lot of redundant process. So it's bring overall efficiency in the entire chain of the process. It helps us in regulatory compliances also, which is like SOX, IFRS, IFCs. A lot of testing can be done through the automated system. Through use of technology, we can bring a lot of such compliance program can be monitored through technology. Of course, reduced audit costs for people like us who are spread into so many countries, and having a main team sitting here out of India. The only option I have is to use the technology to bring over and process mining and like entered through data analytics. Analytics I am picking one example.
Yes, please can.
Somebody saying something? Oh, sorry, I forgot to present it actually. May I do it now?
Yes, please do it. Niraj ji, आप presentation लगा दें, no issues.
Sorry, my fault. I did not realize it. I've just covered automation in the organization through control environment. These are the 9 things which I covered a few minutes back. I was on this slide. So control analytics, fraud analytics, process mining, data visualization, process analytics. Even you can help as an auditor to monitor the process KPI, how particular process is supposed to work. For example, lead time, delivery time, invoicing time. A lot of such process can be KPIs of process can be measured through the process analytics. Then the next one is little bit higher up in the system is performance analytics. Your analytics can help in identify how business is performing. A lot of business people do on their own, but as an auditor, if you bring the all these three together, like identifying the control and fraud KPI, process KPI, and performance KPI, you are going to add and help business in a very, very constructive way, and your data analytics will be highly appreciated. I'll give some example later in the part. This is overall journey. I'll not spend much time here. How it works to bring more ROI, return on investment, like understanding the requirement, data acquisitions, from where you are gathering your data through the cloud, through various your technology. Then data engineering is done. Driving analytics through right combination of quantitative techniques. New technologies are there. R, Python coding is done. Modeling inside what you want to come out with, right? So generating various kind of actionable insight, as I said in last slide, like various kind of KPI you want to monitor or data analytics you want to develop. Those modelings are done. These are then integrated to your entire workflow, and the outcome is distributed to the recipient. These are the phases of data analytics. Initially, it is descriptive. What has happened? So first, you start in your journey. What has happened? So you look at something has gone wrong, right? So identifying those kind of descriptive analytics. Then why it is happening, which is called diagnostic analytics. Then predictive. What is going to happen, right? Let's say you want to predict bad debts, right? So you can develop a modeling, simulation. If various kind of logics can be built. If sales is going up, payment is not coming for so many days. I mean, you can build a lot of analytics here, which would be predictive. Okay, this particular region sale is going to down, or the other debts are going increasing, and there will be So these are all predictive analysis. Or on the sales side, you can do a lot of such analysis for the market. Perspective. This helps actually business, and this will actually influence the outcome of your business, right? So you give a lot of insight more from a business side, which is going to help the business, and the way they are, the small changes through your analytics can help them in achieve their objectives. These are the technology which are being used, which Nandaji has covered: cloud computing, machine learning, robotics, process automation, artificial intelligence, blockchain, deep learning, Internet of the Things, augmented reality. I will not spend much time. It is already covered. Very important slide, internal audit analytics. Why it is advantage for the internal audit? It is going to help you risk profiling, right? Through data analytics or by analytical model, you can help in identifying the risk profile of a company. You can do quantitative analysis. You would be able to know the quantum of what can go wrong. So based on your data study, mining of data, this will help you and of course the risk profile of a company, right? So you should identify, these are my top risks, these are the top 20 risks which I want to start with, and then you start working on those risk profiles. Test data simulations. How it is done? Once you identify the risk area, you look at the data, you start a lot of simulation. Testing is being done. What kind of output is it throwing? So then the next step is to test the data. The next is statistical sampling. You can do the various kind of sampling. This is on a large scale. You can use the entire universe of a data. You can use any particular portion of a data. So you have liberty through a data analytics with the help of technology to do various kind of sampling. The next is, it will help you in continuous control monitoring. right? If you have set certain logic for exception, let's say the simple one is again payment without PO or one-time vendor payment or payment without approval, right? So you can build a control where every day you can come up with exception, right? What I did in my company, we identified a lot of DA, right? And what I thought, when we do traditional audit, it takes 2 to 3 months to come up with the result, right? And by that time, a lot of water has already flown. And the relevance of your report goes down, right? Because by the time you have lost or processes have changed. So how we can be very relevant, right? And that is where DA is going to help us. What I thought for my company, if I can tell my respective process owner, business owner on D+1, D+2 days, these are your problem, right? This is what you need to control. So first, that we would be able to take the decision quickly. We would know the problem, take the decision quickly, and we'll plug the future gaps, right? We'll stop the leakages for the future. And that is where your contribution is more recognized. People are not looking for 2-3 months old data, which again covering last 1 year data. Of course, that is important. But these are the new age technology, data analytics, and by doing that, you bring a lot of real-time analysis. For example, you can do fraud analytics. What can go wrong on a fraud side? Create DA for fraud, like excess use, excess mismanagement. Let's say in our case, customer refund beyond 30 days, refund more than the amount of booking. A lot of those fraud indicators were there, right? And this is very useful tool. This will give you red flags, right? You can create DA and then you can come up with the red flags which can be further deep dive. But this is going to give you indicators. Okay, these are the area where I need to focus. Predictive risk identification. What is something which is beyond, out of the range, right? And outliers of a process KPI or control KPI is like my predictive risk, right? This is going to go wrong. This seems to be in a wrong range, right? This is where we need to focus. This is out of your business objective. This is out of your control objective. This is very important. Control simulation. The technology will also help you by putting various kind of permutation combination. What control is going to work? If I put this kind of, let's say, about the approval mechanism of payment, how many, let's say I want to put VP for approval for payment beyond 1 crore. You can put it and you can see how many transactions are more than 1 crore. Do I need 1 crore? Do I need to increase the quantum of the approval mechanism or the limit for a lot of this kind of analysis can be done, which will throw you a result, right? That what is going to work for me. Of course, the next one is risk quantification. It is much easier with the use of technology because you have a larger sample. You can use the entire universe. You can see the outcome by various kind of combination, simulation. You can see what can and to what extent it can go wrong. I've already covered that it's a real-time exception management. Very, very useful. Please remember, this is going to be internal audit of future. If you are not doing it on a real time, we would be outdated and will not be appreciated and looked after by the business. This is very, very useful in root cause analysis. What is going wrong, right? More than judgmental, now data will help you to identify the root cause. This is my real problem. This is the DO is wrong, or the way this is somebody is putting data or misuse or the role-based access management. Whatever outcome come, you would be able to pinpoint better the root cause, and then that can be taken care of. This is how effective adoption of internal audit. If you look at the top line, this is what traditional audit is all about. You identify your audit objective, you develop your scope, you start field work, test the key hypothesis, and communicate the result. Now in new scenario, what is happening? You identify potential analytics. Of course, after the scope, you identify the potential analytics, extract, transform, and load the data, analyze data, visualize the data. You do a lot of brainstorming, whether this is throwing a right result, wrong result, this is what the objective is. You do certain validation. There are false positive also. please verify it, and then try to reduce the error by again putting a logic. Lot of such discussion takes place with the business, with the audit team, which help you finally come out with the effective data analytics. And then the visualization, how you want to okay, if you are using certain tools which is like Tableau or Power BI, ClickView, I can show you, which is not live, but in the next subsequent slide, on a particular one slide, you can communicate a lot of information without writing a text. And that is the beauty, right? And that is very effective. If you go and present through DA, through visualization model, your output, that will be recognized, well accepted by the people, and then you can deep dive further, you can discuss. That will create much better impact than writing a lot of text. And this is what people are looking for, right? Now the process owner, business people doesn't have much time. They all are in a different zone. They have short span of time for the audit and looking at this thing. They don't, unless they are being told in a right manner, they are not going to spend time with you, right? So, and that is where, and they all are on the auto mode, right? They all are using technology. And if we as internal auditor are not matching with them, we would lag behind, right? And that is where we all have to come up with all these new techniques. Whether you are practicing chartered accountant, please acquire these skills, and then this is going to help you a lot. Even if you are working in a company, please increase your skill set. If you are heading the department, please get people in your team who understand technology. At one point of time, I had 15 to 20% of people in my team were the technology guy, right? And that actually helped me. What I'm talking today and using technology, 4 years back, I was not able to appreciate it, right? In last 2.5 years, the kind of work done with the help of technology, the way it is helping business is much better what I used to do earlier, right? This is, and I'm sure a lot of you people are already on the way, right? I think again, maybe a little bit of overlapping, but there are maturity way. We should not start to catch the big elephant in the beginning. Start with the basics, which is like very basic of data analytics, NAP, data analytics awareness. The internal audit knows whether data analytics is going to help. Data analytics defined understanding within the internal audit and the organization as the value use of data analytics. Then next is managed, data analytics being managed, organization-wide approach to use of data analytics, internal audit, you have coders. So we are here maybe probably. And then data analytics enabled, use of data analytics fully embedded within the internal audit activity. As I said earlier, I have team mainly sitting out of India, and I have a center of excellence here. We have developed a lot of data and taking care of global audit, potential fraud, lot of those things with the help of technology. And actually it took me time, right? So this is the way we started our journey. Okay, so this is audit transformation using data analytics. Again, I think I have covered more or less. These are the challenges and lesson learned. Lack of management buy-in and leadership to drive analytics within internal audit. When you go and talk about that you need to do a lot of data analytics, you want to use the technology, they will not appreciate and they will not be able to understand it because they are thinking that they already have a lot of those data analytics being done for them, right? But what you have to tell them that they look at data from a business point of view, right? But they are not looking from a control KPI. The initial slide which I discussed, the process KPI, the performance KPI. I had similar situation, right, where when I was in consulting and again here, we have fantastic data analytics, one of the probably largest DA team, right? But what they are monitoring versus what we want to monitor from our internal audit point of view is that is very different, and that is where a lot of interaction required. So, and you don't go with a lot of big thing, right? Start slowly, right? Identify few things. go to the management that this is what we can do. Probably the easiest and the most common one is probably the P2P process, right? So how we approach it, that is very important. General lack of understanding within company and probably within the internal auditor team. We are not very tech savvy. I think institute and people like Nandaji is doing putting a lot of effort by by even organizing such kind of conferences to create a lot of awareness. And this is going to be a long way. I think he can guide much better, the kind of support available and learning available. But the important is, I think apart from being a chartered accountant, if we start acquiring these skills, this is going to help you long way in your career. I had few coders in my team, and then what I told my CA guys, right? And we had a lot of this learning session between them. The coder used to write the code, but my chartered accountants, internal auditors, they used to tell what data analytics they want. Even I am not code, I am not expert, I am not technology guy. I know what I want, right? And I help technology guy to build the requirement for me. I wish I knew some of these things on my own, writing. Probably I will, maybe within a year or so, probably I would know something. But a lot of my team members are actually working and learning and acquiring this kind of skill set. Data quality and availability. The challenge is a lot of unstructured data, various kind of application in the company. It takes time, integrate everything, bring everything on for the technology guy and the coders to write a code. That will take time, and that requires a lot of integration and discussions with the technology people, which I'm covering here. Also collaboration with IT, operations, senior management. Lack of well-defined analytics objective. What do we want to analyze? That is very important. Getting the right partner. If you don't have a skill set, please take help from the right people. Start slowly, and then show the result, then create impact. And this is the way of learning. How we do this is what I am doing. We have identified. Let's say I'm talking about fraud analytics or control analytics. We have identified various kind of risk through internal audit, through process review, through whistleblowing. Then we have defined the indicators. To give some number, probably we came up with a 70 plus indicators. Developed did the analysis of risk evaluation. What are my top priority? What can go wrong? Came up with either risk profile, the quantum, the exposure, and then started mitigating through DA. DA is not a mitigate. With the help of DA, we would know this is what is going wrong, this is what is working, this is where the problem is, this is where the exposure is much more, and by knowing the right root cause, we are putting a lot of controls. These are some generic example. Few specific, what can be example of fraud risk. If we talk about finance, misrepresentation of accounts, falsification of employee reimbursement, unauthorized modification in the bank account. If I look at technology, conflicting access right, not the role-based right, super admin right. Let's say you are tracking and you have developed a DA for super admin ID, right? So you define what these IDs are supposed to do, right? Or let's say ops guy ID. All ops ID are supposed to do these 10 things, and they are not supposed to do these 5 things. If anything happening which is beyond their role, those 5 things, that exception will come out, right? So they immediately know, okay, there is a problem in the role being defined, or there is a problem in wrong role has been given to a wrong different people, right? If I talk about procurement, onboarding of a payment against undelivered goods, multiple payments against same invoices, payment against falsified invoices. This is one of the example of, this is the dashboard, right? This is on the Tableau. This is just a photo taken off. Let's say we did some kind of analysis. This is one hypothesis. Let's say 448 things, which was potentially, this is based on certain simulation, may not be the right data. let's say 448 we find duplicate things, right? What is the percentage of overall? What is the amount involved? These are talking about which location. The bigger one means, okay, I have major problem here. This is just a picture click from a tableau. If I click here, let's say the big one, I can double click and I can deep dive further. What is going wrong? Which problem? Which city? What is the problem? Which department probably relating to this particular area? Who are the people? Which ID? Which development manager? You can deep dive. So through this problem, okay, this is my potential problem, 448. This is the exposure percentage. This is the amount of exposure could be. These many cities has got a problem. The big one I can immediately click on, and then if you go much deeper, you know what are the root cause, what are the people as a root cause, process as a root cause. What is which is contributing to these factors, and then you know the root cause, you know the problem, you know the people, and then you take the decision. Similarly, this is again some kind of analysis, for let's say for example, we have a travel agent commission. There is certain rule defined, which has thrown some kind of exception to me. Through this kind of visualization, I can know, okay, there is a city, this is the amount involved, double click it, and you can go to the source data, right? You can go deeper the way you want to look at. If you want to see trend, you can put the comparative dates here also. So this is the beauty of so many texts. If I start writing, this particular Bengaluru has this many problem, here 2 people had a problem, this is very difficult, right? This is how, if you present it to the management, right, you start clicking and they want to look at, okay, I want to say this particular city, right? This is again one kind of sample analytics of output. These are all on a real-time data analytics developed by us on a various parameters. This is again another kind of visualization. You can click, the problem, right? This is about the hotel rooms we have, and there are various parameters here. I will not elaborate much, but just wanted to show you how things looks like, right? Again, this is from a tool. There is coding being done, data mining is done, exceptions come out on Excel. You have, if you double click, you'll go to the lot of source data, and then this is the output in terms of presentation. All these are various kind of lot of these analysis are here. Probably this particular slide, which I can understand, I know, is telling me at least 20 stories, right? This is what I think, for example, you can create, and as I said, probably you can start with P2P analytics on the accounts payable, unusual trend in the vendor payment, vendor wise reversal. You can put, okay, particular vendor has so many reversal. If any adjustment is happening, credit note. You can put continuous invoice number from a particular vendor. These are all fraud indicators, right? All these, if you put as a logic, will start throwing you the exception. Same invoice. Other thing is that when we did it in our company, we actually decided there would be certain thing which is required on a daily basis. There would be certain output which is required to be measured on fortnightly, monthly, and the other one is the need base. Then we mapped it with the various process owner. What dashboard you just saw was going to the respective process owner on daily basis, if it was a daily case, fortnightly, and periodically as it was defined, right? So by default, every morning he would see, okay, these are the exception. These are the let's say same invoice with the same vendor. This is again one time, let's say single vendor having multiple vendor code. Vendor paid without PO, vendor paid without approval or something, from a different ID. Whatever logic you build, the next day, or I mean the on the date of transaction, probably the next day they would know this is what is happening. But now probably the need of an hour and probably where we all are moving and would be moving is how we can stop, and probably where if you see the banking system, they are much stronger in preventive mode, right? If you probably have seen that if you put a wrong CRV number 2 or 3 times, it blocks, or it sends you a message that if it is a right transaction, wrong transaction. Let's say if you are using credit card beyond, let's say for a higher amount, 50,000 above, they have built all this kind of logics, right? The moment you start 50,000 transaction or out of India transaction, it will actually give alert, right? And probably send you for the confirmation. These are preventive measures through the analytics. And we all will move slowly there. For example, again, this is all kind of data analytics being developed. Payment date prior to invoice. Payment currently different from invoice currency. Split advance payment, frequent voided payments, payment made to high risk countries and high risk currency, payment approved by same person who created the payments, invoiced vendor information not matching with PO information. A lot of these things can be done through DA, through machine learning, right? How this one invoice vendor information not matching with PO information. Now, and I think banking system are lot of banks are using this kind of technology or trying to use the technology where robotics and machine learning is actually using and reading the text and telling you the problem, right? Again, probably I'm reiterating the way business is moving. They are all coming and going to use such technology, right? We have to be quick enough and to catch them, right? And try to be ahead of them by acquiring by upgrading ourselves with such kind of skill set. And when you go and talk to business, why I'm talking about data analytics, this is the things I want to learn to, and based on your audit finding, you can tell them, right? If we use these kind of things, probably this kind of technology and build this kind of preventive control, this is going to help you what you have identified after 6 months or a year. Something has gone wrong or duplicate payment is happening. You bring all these changes in your through analytics, this is going to help them. So first, you need to demonstrate, start slowly, build small, start slowly on the technology side, create small impact, and then sell yourself. These are again few examples. I have these are some real example from my company. Multiple properties having same latitude, longitude, reservation, short duration, refund, as I said, cash collected beyond certain limit, refund process against cancel booking, anything. So a lot of such analytics being built, which was very helpful, and it was really it is like partnering with the business, right? And this is where the use of technology will take you. When you come up with an audit report with a long finding with a big text, it shows that you are pinpointing something. You start partnering. You tell them, okay, why you want to wait for audit report to come up, and why do you want to wait for something to go wrong? This is how I'm going to help you, right? You are monitoring a lot of these things. Let me also be part of this. And these are the things I want to help you. And this is how we can monitor it, right? And how we can control it. If you start talking in this fashion, show them result, it will be highly appreciated. And then there will be a lot of buying for you. Believe it, we have done it. And how it is helping is there are a lot of things which we discuss on a monthly basis. There are a lot of things which is preventing a lot of leakages before it happens. I am having now a very optimizing my team. So many countries. We are as of now probably in 80 countries. I don't have a team in 80 countries. We have to be cost efficient because we keep suggesting cost control to the people. So first we have to demonstrate, and that is where probably it looks in the beginning that you are investing in a technology, but this is a need enough hour. This is the future of audit. For 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, if you are not in this era, if you are not in this game, you are out of the game. and you will be redundant. I mean, of course, people from our own system will come up, who are acquiring this skill for themselves or as a group. They would be more visible and they would be performing. So very important to come up with this kind of modeling, use of technology. Lot of audit happening. This was more on a data analytics, because I feel that it will take little longer way for us to get involved into blockchain, robotics, machine learning. This is part of machine learning also for internal audit point of view. Business is doing a lot of these things. They are into those trend. So start on a right note. Start slowly with a DA. Believe it. This is going to help the way they will look at internal audit. They will start coming to you, right? Instead of you going to them, chasing them for the problem, for the audit, they would start coming to you. That can you help me with these things? So this is how I look and I see the future of internal auditor. My request to all of you, start thinking when you go to any company. If you are a practitioner, give thought about it. I'm sure a lot of you are doing and would be doing it, or maybe most of you. But this is very helpful, and probably if we chartered accountant can learn SQL, Python. I mean, whatever time it takes, that would be a very deadly combination, because we know the process, we know the control, and if you know the coding, that will be much helpful. Right now, we all are taking help of a technology guy and putting our knowledge put together. But this is the way we have to start with. But slowly, if we start, having those skill set in ourselves, that will be much helpful. I can elaborate much more on all of these things, but due to lack of time, probably if you have any question, which we'll take up later. Am I on the time?
Yes, sir. You still have a couple of minutes in case you wish to continue, or else we can move forward.
No, I can. If you want me to elaborate something.
I think most of it is done. So
yeah, we'll keep some time for question answer. Maybe that is that will be much more useful, and people come up with their question. Again, wish you great health, right, and happy auditing. Please mark it. This is the most important thing going to happen. I call it internal audit of future, and I'm sure we all would be on that. Thank you very much.
all right, sir. Thank you so much for your time and for your knowledge. You beautifully highlighted the importance of technology in the internal audit process, and you've also guided us how you use the technology in your own organization and helped in generation of various reports, and then accordingly taking a decision based on those reports. Moving forward, now it's time for the second session, which is reimagining the internal audit of banks. And Mr. Pichai Mahalingam would be taking that session. Let me give a brief intro of the next speaker to all of you. Mr. Pichai Mahalingam is a career banker with more than 3 decades of experience across PSUs, private and global banks. He has vast experience in the area of product management, process management, corporate business development, and banking operations. He has implemented various systems and processes and digital banking channels for the banks where he has worked. In his current role, he heads the internal audit function of Federal Bank. It's over to you, sir. Good luck.
Thanks a lot, Iqbal, for the nice introduction. I have to thank Nandaji for giving me this opportunity. And I am a little bit nervous now because after Niraj's session, I have learned a lot from Niraj's session. Thanks, Niraj, for the great session on automation. What I am trying to do is, talk a little bit more about the practical issues which are faced by bank's internal audit, and a little bit on how do we resolve those issues, and then how do we automate the internal audit in the banks. This was a great session from Niraj. I have personally learned a lot. I think I will try to implement some of them in my own bank. So I'll put my presentation on the screen. Just a minute. Is it visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
I'll. Okay. So I just wanted to talk about some points which is the expectation from the board or from the management of the bank. What is the objectives and what are the expectations from the internal audit function? The first point is aligning the process to achieve the strategic objectives. So the banking has changed over a period of time, right? Traditional way of banking has changed, and the new way of banking, or what we are right now facing, as Niraj mentioned, banking over a period of time, we have already implemented a lot of systems, controls to avoid frauds, to identify risk areas. But the ever-changing banking, for example, right now we are talking about partnership with fintechs. So even though we are different fintechs come with different technologies, different product offerings, and bank has all the banks have no other option. We have to collaborate with those fintechs, and within the banks also most of the products are coming digitally. So what I mean by aligning the process to achieve strategic objectives is that the internal audit function of the bank also has to change, considering the change in the business models. So if the business model itself is focused based on using technology as the delivery, we also have to modify the internal audit process to ensure that we support the business. It's not that we are trying to stop the business. We have to ensure that we understand the technology, understand the partnerships, understand the products, and modify the processes, audit processes, and then which will help us to identify the risks involved in the various business processes and help the business to grow. So that is the main purpose of this. And as the internal audit of the bank, we are reporting to the audit committee of the board. So I have to give the assurance to the board that everything is perfect and the risks are identified and risks are mitigated by providing timely report. And that is a major responsibility of any internal audit function within the bank. And the third one, especially for banks like us, regulatory compliance is very, very important. So I have to gain the regulators' confidence. You would have seen, you would have read in the news also that RBI nowadays is very, very serious about internal audit control functions, and there are a lot of penalties, restrictions which are being imposed on the banks who are not having proper control. You would have seen about RBI imposing penalty on KYC related issues or investment related issues, or even recently you would have seen that one of the bigger banks in India was pulled up for the systems not functioning properly, so which resulted in customer inconvenience. So from the Reserve Bank of India point of view, from the regulators point of view, they look at the whole ambit of the banking function, and then as an internal auditor of the bank, we have to ensure that we take care of all the regulatory complaints, and then ensure that we gain the regulators' confidence. So whenever RBI looks at the bank's performance from the control point of view, from the regulatory point of view, they have to get a confidence that this bank is being run properly. So that is the most important point which we'll have to ensure as an internal audit function. The second point is that improved risk identification. As I mentioned earlier, that the banking process itself is changing on a regular basis. So based on that, the bank audit also, internal audit also, audit process has to be very, very agile. And within the bank, there are multiple functions. For example, there is a first line of defense, there is a second line of defense, and internal audit as a third line of defense also has to collaborate with other risk management functions, like it's a credit risk management or operational risk management, market risk management. So we'll have to collaborate with those risk management functions to identify the risk areas and then find the mitigating controls. So that is very important from the bank's internal audit point of view. The risk assessment done in a collaborative way will also help us to plan the audit properly. How do we do audit? How do we do audit remotely? How do we do audit physically? So those, and what is the frequency of audit? Those things are very important, and this collaboration will help us to finalize those activities. And once if the collaboration is perfect, we can do the risk assessment reference points. So, for example, RCA type of control risk testing. Those things are very, very important from bank's point of view, and we need collaboration will really help in this. Compliance, as I mentioned, regulatory compliance is very important, and that is one of the top priority for the bank's internal audit. The third one which I wanted to talk about is the productivity level of the internal audit function itself, the resources which are part of the internal audit. Nowadays, resource is very, very scarce. We have to use optimum usage of the resources which are available. As Niraj mentioned, the type of the resources, the qualification of the resources also is very important nowadays. Experience is very important on the one hand, whereas the technology qualified technical people are also very much required in the internal audit function of the bank. So that is very, very much required so that we can focus on the risk areas, and also we can modify and change the audit strategies of the bank. And we need the skill sets also. We need people who can understand, identify the risks wherever it is there, and then how to use the technology to mitigate those risks, identify as well as mitigate those risks, which is very important. So that is where the productivity level and optimum utilization of resources which are available, that is very important from the bank's point of view. The next point which I want to focus is on consistent analysis for enhanced risk identification and mitigation, which is partly covered in the earlier point also. Traditionally, banks follow standard audit scope, but considering the current business model changing of the bank, and then so the audit scope also it should cover the basic audit requirements, as well as it should be dynamic enough to get some modifications done during the year, and it should be based on the analytics data, the inputs provided by the data analytics, and we should be able to modify the scope as well as the audit strategy of the bank. Always, as Niraj mentioned, the data analytics will help us to identify the potential areas of improvement on a regular basis, and there should be a systematic process of monitoring. So automation should identify the areas for improvement on a regular basis, as well as putting in the necessary controls and the monitoring and testing capabilities which can be automated. Reporting is one of the major areas where the bank should focus. It should be the reporting should be agile, and it should be timely reporting, and the remediation is very, very important. Effective remediation. So banks normally look at we normally have some timeline for remediation of the audit issues. Most of the time the teams meet, the business teams meet, but many of the times it becomes difficult. So that is where we have to look at how do we identify strategies which can help the business also to remediate the outcomes. So these are the objectives which I felt that as an internal audit function of the bank has to look at. more carefully and then work on this. Sorry, I'm trying to go to the next slide. Yeah. So when we look at these objectives, how do we meet those objectives? I looked at the challenges faced in a traditional model of internal audit, specifically to the banks. As Nandaji mentioned, the pandemic situation currently which is faced is a big problem which is faced by most of the bank audit functions. Because bank audit involves, it's not fully dependent on data-based, analytics-based audit. There are a lot of areas in bank audit which requires physical audit as well as decentralized audit. I cannot do everything sitting centrally in one office and look at the data and do it. We may reach that stage after some time, but in the current situation, most of the banks have this problem. If I have to do a stock audit, I have to go to the customer's place and visit and then check the stock whether it is available or not. Or if I have to, for a bank like us, where our focus is more on, say, gold audit, gold loan. Gold loan, the gold jewelry is pledged with the bank. So if I have to do an audit, I cannot do it centrally. It's difficult to do it, and some of the audits are we have to do, or I have to do a legal audit or a documentation audit, where I have to actually come look at the document which is obtained from the customer and see whether it is correct. So these are situations, audits which cannot be centralized or as of now, where a physical visit to a branch, physical visit to a customer is very much required. And in the current pandemic situation, I agree with Nandaji that most of the auditors are finding it difficult to do this because of the situation at the branch level or at the customer level. Traveling is not possible. As a bank, we are also facing these issues, and hopefully, I think we'll get rid of this very shortly. The second challenge which banks face is multiple legacy systems. So, yes, banks have core banking which is standardized across different banks. Banks use Finacle or FlexCube, those type of systems. But there are a lot of banking products which are being offered from other systems, not from the core systems. So the traditional audit model, unless we integrate these data systems and get the data centrally, it's very difficult for the audit function to function, because I had to look at multiple systems to validate the data and validate the controls, and managing it is very difficult. I'm saying it is not there. This problem is not faced by all the banks, but some of the banks face these problems. The third point which I want to focus on is the lack of automation of processes, resulting in increased risk. So even which is related to the earlier point which I mentioned, even today, a lot of banks audit function work on manual processes or multiple spreadsheets, or half automation, half manual. So these are the consolidation of the audit comments, identification of risks, and then correlating one issue with another issue. These are the problems which banks face when there is no automation available. This is still faced by even bigger banks also today, and this is a major issue, which is a major problem which has to be addressed quickly. The fourth point which I want to focus is on inconsistent and deficient audit processes. The first point I mentioned earlier, growing automation, use of latest technology in products and business. So whether audit is going to use the latest technology or not, business is not waiting for that. Business is already using latest technologies. As Niraj mentioned, audit using blockchain technology, those type of technologies, maybe it will happen after some time, but actually business has already started using those technologies. So audit has to understand those technologies and identify strategies. How do we identify the risks, and then how do we mitigate those risks? So from the audit process, audit function point of view, these technologies are very important. Understanding, at least understanding of these technologies are important, and how to incorporate new tools to understand and identify the risks involved, that is more important. So traditionally, bank audits are checklist based or transaction oriented, and I think we have to move towards automated audits and process oriented audits, which is very important from the audit risk point of view. Otherwise, the next point which will happen is this one, the low productivity. So if you are still going to do transaction based audit manually and then checklist based audit, the productivity of the team will be very, very low, and the business is always going to grow. It's not going to stop. Business is going to grow. The audit function is supposed to support the business by identifying the risks and mitigating those risks. But if the productivity levels are not improved and the processes are not automated, adding more people to the audit process is not going to help. It is not going to help, and it is not going to. One is on the productivity point of view, and as well as from the effectiveness point of view. Manual processes are not 100% perfect. We may miss out many things. We may miss out some risks. We may miss out on some frauds, which are very crucial from the bank's point of view. So if the audit function is not automated or it's manual, the time spent on exception management, escalations to the next levels for getting the issues resolved, and the time spent on non-core activity, 50 Excel sheet and spending time on it, consolidating it, and missing out on some of the points. So these are the areas which are resulting in low productivity. Audit function, or the people who are working in the audit function, are supposed to do audit, but in many times actually people are spending time in activities which are not relevant to audit. So that is what I mean by non-core activities. I think we'll have to identify those areas and see how we can automate those areas. That is very important. The next point, which is a challenge from the audit function point of view, is the visibility of audit process within the organization. In many of the organizations, yes, the view of the audit function is changing. The importance of audit function is understood, but still it's still a long way to go. And again, from the audit function point of view, it is our responsibility to improve the visibility within the organization. So we should not be seen as what I say as a roadblock in the business improvement, but we should be seen as an enabler in business development. So that is where we have to improve the visibility of the audit as a process, and we have to show the business that it is going to help them to grow the business. So that is very important. That's an important point. The next point which I want to mention is which I briefly discussed earlier also, the missing links with other risk management functions. This may not be happening in many of the banks, but in some of the banks it may happen. If there is no coordination between other risk management functions, it's going to be duplication of efforts or missing of opportunities of identifying risks. And in many of the banks, different lines of defense use different systems. There is no integration between those systems. For example, operational risk may be using a different system, which may not be talking to the system which is used by the audit system, internal audit system. Or the credit risk may be using another system which may not be talking to the audit system. So if there are missing links within the organization between various risk management functions, that is not going to help the organization. So that is one of the areas of challenge where banks have to look at how do we integrate those systems and then link those control, risk assessments, control, monitoring, and then remediation. So that is very important from the organization's point of view, where duplications can be avoided and the effectiveness of the audit function can be improved. The next point is the scaling up of audit. So which again, it is linked to the productivity as well as the effectiveness of the audit function. If we are able to scale up the audit function to support the business, so the business is always going to grow. But if the audit function is not able to support the business, if the audit function is lagging behind because of the manual processes, or not using the latest technologies to identify the risks and mitigate those risks, it is going to be difficult for the organization itself. Organization will not be able to grow from the business point of view. So the audit should scale up to support the business. So that is the point which I want to mention. Moving on to the next slide. So I'm coming to the theme of the presentation, reimagining of internal audit. How do we do it? So we have looked at the practical problems faced by the banks. We have looked at the challenges which are faced, and how do we modify the internal audit function to address those issues. So some of the points which I mentioned here are already used by many banks, and some of them are work in progress. We as a bank also, we use many of these ideas, and we always work continuously on improving our audit function. So we have to re-engineer the audit process on a regular basis. It's as I mentioned, when the business is changing on a daily basis, the audit function cannot remain the same. Audit function also has to change, and we have to look at areas where we can re-engineer the audit process itself and then automate wherever it is possible. So the first activity here is data integration and centralization. So as I mentioned to you, banking audit is slightly different from other audits, where banking audit requires in some areas physical visits to branches, customers, physical verification of data, documents. So if we have to look at automating those areas, data integration and centralization is very, very crucial. When I mean by data integration, as I mentioned earlier, if the transaction processing of the bank is happening in multiple systems, the data should be centralized or integrated in one place. If I cannot do this, it's going to be very, very difficult, because as an audit function, I have to look at areas where I should be able to link from one particular failure to another function. For example, if I find a transaction is having a problem, it can be a fraud, but I should be able to identify whether the particular customer's KYC was done properly. If my transaction processing system is a different system and my KYC system is a different system, if I'm not able to find the link between these two, it's going to be a difficult thing for the bank auditor. So that's what I meant, that the data availability should be centralized, data should be integrated between systems, so that the audit will be able to identify the links between the issues. If I have a risk in one particular transaction or a particular activity, I should be able to find out the linked area and see whether, or it can be even, it can be a link between one customer and another customer, whether the same fraud is possible in another area or another product. So I should be able to link these things. So that is where I say that data integration should be very, very important, and centralization of data. So the data should be available to the auditor centrally. It cannot be a decentralized process. It should be a centralized process, centralized data. So where I can integrate the data and validate the data centrally. That is very important. The second point is the centralized document depository. Even now, many banks face this problem where the documents which are related to customer transactions, it can be a loan transaction, or it can be a normal payment transaction, or a account opening as a transaction. If the documents are not, the scanned documents are not available centrally, it's going to be difficult for the audit function to validate these documents So that is very important from the bank's point of view. There should be a central document depository which can be used by the audit function to correlate with the data which is available. The third point, which is very important, is the preservation of audit evidences. We do a lot of audits, but in some cases we may not be able to reproduce those evidences. Even I'm talking from the data point of view as well as from the physical documents point of view. That is where the bank should look at how do we preserve the audit evidences, which is very, very crucial for us to refer in future. Fourth point is how do we centralize the audits? So how do we do remote audits? Many of the banks do it wherever data is available possible. We are able to do centralized audit. And if we can work more on the centralized data availability, we can improve increase the opportunity of remote audits. So that is very important, and where I can actually reduce the number of auditors who are involved and then improve the productivity levels. So this is very important from the bank's point of view. So the next point is automation of control execution and exception monitoring. It was partly touched by Niraj in his session earlier. I have to look at automating the control execution. I cannot do this as a manual process. So this is very important from the efficient control risk assessment point of view, as well as, for example, IFC testing. In many banks, it is done automatically. In many banks, it is also done manually. So we have to look at always opportunities. How do we identify these automation capabilities within the bank itself? Implementation of flexible workflows for escalations and exceptions with auto follow-up. So if I identify within the audit function, if there are issues identified, how do we report those issues? How do I have a workflow of escalation within the organization? How the aging, how it goes to the next level for resolution. So if I don't have a proper flexible workflow for escalation and resolution, it's going to be a problem. And most of the banks face this problem even today, where this escalation and follow-up mechanism is done manually, which is not ideal situation. So banks have to focus on this area, which is very crucial. Next one is the detailed reports and dashboards. So again, it is linked to the previous one. One is the escalation workflow. The second one is the reports and dashboards. Unless we have effective reporting and dashboarding, reducing the audit comments or looking at the reducing the aging of the comments and then identification of the risks and then escalation. So it's going to be difficult. So banks have to focus on reporting, effective reporting and dashboarding, and this should be at different levels, different type of reporting, different type of dashboarding for different level of hierarchy structure. So that is very crucial from the bank's point of view, from the efficiency of the audit function point of view. The next point which I want to focus is on efficient remediation process. So when we look at audit, when we find our issues in the audit, the remediation process is not complete just by resolving the current issue. So the root cause analysis is very, very important from the long-term point of view. And then based on the root cause analysis, the bank audit should be able to, not only the audit, the other support functions also should be look at how do we quickly modify the existing controls to take care of this in the short term, and how do we introduce new controls also if the existing controls are not functioning. And we also look at the system level introduction of system level controls, which are short term in nature, because if there is time required for implementing some long term controls, it may be possible that we may work with some short term controls, and we also look at some long term controls. The next point is very, very important, elimination of repeated failures issues. From the bank's point of view, even the regulator is looking at this as a major point. If a particular failure or a particular issue is repeating regularly, that is considered as a that the controls are not working. That's very clear from the regulatory point of view. So, as the audit function, we look at elimination of these repeated failures and issues, and then identify why it is happening, if at all, if it is happening, why it is happening, and then see how we can resolve these issues. So these points, I thought, we should do a process reengineering of the internal audit function and then see how do we automate some of the points, some of the areas. Let me go to the next slide. Yeah. This is in continuation of the earlier slide. How do we do automation? Most of the points were covered by Nandaji as well as Niraj. We should look at RPAs. RPAs can be used in bank audit mainly for repetitive type of work, where we can actually use it for control testing, automating the monitoring, compliance, and validation processes. This is very crucial from the point of view of improving the productivity levels as well as the quality of audit. If I can use RPA for these type of functions, actually I don't have to look at currently what happens is in many of the banks we look at we identify the risks, medium, high, medium, low, and then identify the frequency of audit. And if I can do automation of this, I don't have to do that. I can actually do 100% testing, and it can be a continuous audit. So it will help us to do that. And as I mentioned earlier, if the auditor is going to spend time in transaction level auditing, that's not going to help. And if I can use that RPA in that process, that will really help. I don't have to put an auditor doing that audit. Auditor can do much more quality work. So we can use RPAs in those areas which are repetitive in nature and which can be automated. The second point is using artificial intelligence, NLP, ML, OCR, pattern recognition, system self-learning. So these are new technologies which are available for the bank, which can be used. So for example, OCR, when I talk about OCR or artificial intelligence, for example, if I have to compare the document which is signed by the customer for a loan or normally loan documents are standard, but if there are any customized documents which has to be read and converted into text and then compared with the standard documentation. So those things, if it is done manually currently, and if these technologies can be used for that purpose, which will be really useful for the internal audit function. So that's what I feel we should look at these new technologies in supporting the audit function. Improved risk assessment using data analysis, very clearly it is possible. Niraj has clearly showed us how it can be used. Even in the bank, we can use this data analysis for identifying new risk areas and come out with mitigating controls. Predictive analysis, again, Niraj talked about it. It will help us to identify the regulatory areas where there can be a miss out or where there can be a failure, or we can also even identify fraud risks. If there are areas nowadays, you may be knowing that banks are putting more controls, whereas fraudsters are coming out with more ideas of how to do frauds. So it is a regular ongoing process where we have to do predictive analysis. We should be one level up, better than the fraudsters. We should be able to identify areas where the frauds can happen and then see how we can mitigate those areas, mitigate those risks. And the data analysis, when it is used properly, we should be able to provide dynamic as well as qualitative inputs to the internal as well as external audit. So when we are doing audit, if I can get some inputs from the data analysis to identify some more areas and then look at more areas, that will really help the internal as well as external auditors very much. Then the data analysis will also help us for us to work out a very effective audit plan and also work on the strategies for the audit. The last point which I mentioned earlier also, that we should look at tools to manage the newer risks. The risks are increasing every day. As I mentioned, the fraud risk area, which is changing on a daily basis. New type of frauds are coming from in the banking area. Like that, banks are also changing their business models, right? We use fintechs. Fintechs use different. It's not whether the bank is using it or not. Fintechs are using. Our partners are using new technologies. For example, in our own bank, we use blockchain technology for remittances and business. We use blockchain technology for microfinance. API is a very commonly used technology between the banks and fintechs and banks and corporates. And cloud is new norm in banking now. So cloud technologies. So there are a lot of things which are coming in the business model of the bank. Business model is changing. So we have to, as an audit function, we have to find new tools which can help us to manage these additional risks, which are new risks which are coming because of the new technologies. So audit also has to look at new technology tools to identify this and manage these new risks. Just a minute, I'm trying to move to the next slide. Yeah. So whatever we discussed till now, if we can do the process engineering, if I work on the automation, data analytics, what is the benefit the bank can get? The quality of the audit is going to improve, definitely, and the consistency of the audit process also will improve. So this is very important from the bank's point of view, and we can be able to be flexible in our audit strategies, and the audit strategies can be very, very effective by using these models. We can optimize the productivity, which we discussed earlier also, and the continuous audit. So, which I mentioned earlier, if I can automate the control testing type of audits, so the audit can be continuous. I don't have to do sampling. I can improve the frequency. There's no frequency. Actually, it will be 100% audit and always 24/7 audit. So that will help us, and this will help us in cost reduction. So the from the audit function cost point of view, if I can do centralized audit, there's no need of auditors traveling across the country, and also the time spent in or the audit function will come down drastically, and the number of resources required also will come down drastically. So that will result in cost reduction. And the continuous auditing will also help in effective risk mitigation, because I am not doing only sampling. I'm looking at the whole data, whole set of transactions. That will help us in effectively reduce the risks and mitigate those risks. And timely and quality reporting is one of the benefit which we'll achieve by implementing these controls, these automations. And the audit process can be very, very scalable. If the bank is going to double the business in the next 3 years, 2 years, or a bank is getting into new business segments, and the audit process will be able to support the business very effectively. So I end this session at this point. I'll wait for the question and answer sessions. Thanks a lot. Thanks Nandaji. Thanks Iqbal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. That was indeed very enlightening. Members, we will do the query session after the third session. Next, we have a session by Mr. B. Govind Raju. He would be speaking on fraud risk management. And let me first introduce him to all of you. Mr. B. Govind Raju is a qualified cost accountant with a post-qualification experience of 22 years. He also has a CIMA and a CISA qualification to his credit. He started his career with the prestigious TPS group, wherein he spent more than 15 years and played multiple challenging roles. He was deputed in Indonesia in 2006, where he was given the unique opportunity to be a part of setting up of a greenfield project of two-wheeler manufacturing plant in Indonesia, and he did extensive work, including setting up a supply chain, distribution, retail finance, and IT systems there as a finance controller. Later on, he moved on to MRF, where he is still working as a head of the internal audit. He has expanded the areas of audit into marketing, engineering, IT functions, etc., and streamlined the entity level controls and SOPs. He's involved in fraud investigations as well. There's a lot more to his profile, but again, we have to start with the session. So, all over to you, sir.
Yeah, good evening. Am I visible?
Yes, sir, you're visible and audible.
Okay, thank you for the nice introduction, and it really motivated me. And so I think I am the tail ender for today's match. I think Mr. Niraj has done the opening batting, and he has scored more than what is required. So being a tail ender, I think my asking rate is actually less actually. So if the asking rate is more, then if I have to score more, then probably I'll be, being watched diligently. So unfortunately, I think my asking rate is less. So I'll try to just fill the time as much as possible. So
You might consider yourself as Ravindra Jadeja, and
okay,
everybody is keen on watching you.
okay, so yeah, so in, last Saturday when Nandaji spoke to me, then he was asking about can you do a session on data analytics and technology and all that. I said, no, sir, I'm neither an expert in that nor a profound speaker. So I told Mr. Neeraj would be a better bet. In fact, we did a session together last Saturday. So then I immediately remembered Neeraj, and then I mentioned to him. Then I think we both of us got together today. So fortunately, we are again back. So my topic is a general topic. So I chose a very careful topic so that I can talk very generally. So fraud risk management is something which which is a hot topic. Even otherwise, thanks to the pandemic, I think some kind of focus distraction has happened. Otherwise, you would be seeing every other day some big news items coming up saying that this has happened, that has happened, and all that. So I think thanks to the IBC being frozen and pandemic, this thing blows. So the major frauds are not really coming up. So I don't want to take more time on this. So let me just start sharing my small presentation which I just put together. Yeah, is it visible?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, so most of these, the views and this thing are personal. They don't represent any of my organization or anything. So I'll just try to put across some of my thoughts and insights on the whole thing. Yeah, so we are really going through some kind of challenging time, and the pandemic is at a very peak level, and there are we have seen the known knowns and known unknowns last year. Now I think with the second wave really hitting us very bad, I think we are really going through unknown unknowns. So we don't know what is going to happen, and there is a lot of uncertainty, and there is a lot of efforts being going on in terms of whether to save the lives or to save the livelihood of the people. So there is a lot of arbitrage in terms of the government efforts going on, and the organizations are also stepping up a lot of efforts in terms of sustaining the business, and then just trying to stay above the waters as much as possible, whether it is the organization, whether it is a country, whether it is the family. So all of us are going through some kind of a challenging times. So even the fraud area also, there are many unknown unknowns. So every time we see a case study on a fraud, so there will be something very new learning which we will see. Whether it is a Punjab National Bank or whether it's a PMZ, whether it is a ILFS. So every time we will come to know something very, very new and fundamental. So the same way, I think, the fraud risk management also has to be very. So my session is basically I'll be talking about what are the regulatory drivers and which are all the the regulations which is really required for us to look at, and what is the strategy to combat fraud in terms of the prevention and detection, and then response mechanism required whenever there is a fraud. and then most importantly, the organization culture and what is the visible organization culture and what is invisible organization culture, how that particular fraud risk management has got a implications with respect to the organization culture. And I will also talk a little bit about how do you really prevent frauds and how do you detect, and then what is the response mechanism. Of course, these are all, most of them are general stuff, and of course I will add my insights wherever it is possible. And is there a role of internal audit in the fraud risk management? So that also I will try to explain. And then I'll, if time permits, then I'll couple of case studies I will just put together, to understand how the red flags can be really detected, and is there any methodology by which we can, even before the fraud really emerges, is there any way which we can do some kind of a forensic analysis, and as an auditor or as an individual or an investor, is there a way to just get some kind of early warning signals? So I'll try to explain that, and then other potential areas of fraud, and then finally the Q&A. Yeah, so just to recapitulate, I just put across a fraud definition which has been put into the Companies Act 2013. Probably, I think the first time we got a blown up definition in terms of what is fraud, which is captured in the section 143 of this particular Companies Act. If you look at this fraud definition, it is very, very wide and very, very, in terms of the ramifications, it is quite wide and very, comprehensive. So it says that any act or omission or concealment of any fact or abuse of position committed by any person in relation to the affairs of the company, with the conveyance of any manner. So it is actually opening up a Pandora's box, whether it is you're an employee, whether it's a stakeholder, whether you're a customer, whether it is a vendor. So everybody, has a role to play in this. And intent to deceive is, that is very important part of this whole thing. And, whether or not there is a wrongful gain or not. So when the fraud is committed and there is an intention to commit, you don't have to really see whether there is an impact on the other person or not. Just the intention to deceive itself is more than sufficient to, to say that there is a irregularity or a fraud which is being committed. So the law is very clear, very clear and very cleverly and smartly being put across in terms of the importance of fraud definition in the Companies Act. And the regulatory drivers, if you look at, in terms of the regulatory drivers, the directors actually, they need to set up a proper system to ensure that the frauds and irregularities are really prevented and detected. So it is the responsibility of the people who are in charge of the governance. So that is the first and foremost important thing as far as the fraud risk management is concerned. And also directors are responsible for setting up a whistleblower mechanism to ensure that, the probable complaints and genuine concerns are addressed either by employees or the directors or any other third party. And independent directors, most importantly, they have to ensure that the risk management systems are very robust and defensible. So it doesn't specifically talk about the fraud risk management, but fraud risk is also part of the risk management. So, so the directors are really have to ensure that those risk which will threaten the existence of the company, they have to really ensure that there is a proper risk management system which will also cover the fraud risk management. And the last one, of course, we are all aware, statutory auditors have been given a task to ensure that they need to report the frauds to the central government as soon as they detect the fraud, and they need to give a reasonable opportunity to the audit committee to come back with their response, and then they need to report, I think, in 45 days time, anything more than 1 crore in terms of the financial implication. And of course, even the cost auditor and secretarial auditor also, they are also required to adhere to this particular class. So some of the other regulatory drivers, if you look at, the most important amendment which has happened is the Prevention of Corruption Act in 2018, which also equally puts the onus on the bribe giver. So normally, the public servants, they are more responsible. So the Prevention of Corruption Act actually will put a onus on the bribe givers, including the some of the commercial organizations where the penalties and imprisonment as high as a bribe taker. So that is very important from a fraud risk point of view, because it has a large reputation risk on the organization. If something happens and somebody gets caught, for an employee or a third party who is trying to bribe the employee of a public servant, then there is a possible implication for the organization as well. And you would also recently seen SEBI circular on forensic assignments. Any forensic assignment, whatever name it may be called, so that must be reported to the stock exchanges. So whichever way it is called, so they've made sure that all the forensic audit reports, they're all publicly available, and the investors are supposed to know those developments also. And the third one, of course, the CARO 2020, it has again added a onerous responsibility, on the statutory auditors. So not only, reporting the frauds, and also they have to go through the whistleblower compliance. So this is an additional regulatory driver, and the statutory auditor also has been, drafted into this particular exercise. So he has to go through the whistleblower compliance and then see that those frauds are all taken care and resolved, or if anything is remaining, then he has to report that. And most importantly is the insolvency and the bankruptcy code, IBC. And so that is a major regulated driver. I think it is a major regulated driver from a point of view how it is actually creating a deterrence in the minds of the promoters. So the promoters cannot get away, then take away money and then siphon off some funds and then say that no, let the company go to dogs. So that cannot happen anymore, because once you gets into IBC, then somebody else will take the management charge, and then they will not have any management control. Therefore, they have all the incentive to pay the loans and other things. So they can't let the RENs go out of control. So that is a major deterrence as far as the fraud risk management is concerned. So the promoters will be on under watch. And the next thing is NFRA. This is also a recent development where the National Financial Regulatory Authority has been constituted, and they have a wide powers in terms of doing quality review of certain companies, listed companies, and certain class of limited and private companies also. So they can also do a peer review and quality review of audit reports of this thing, and they have a complete control on the auditors, and then they have to ensure that the accounting standards are complied with, and then they have a wide regulatory powers. So this is a major tool in the hands of the central government to ensure that the various stakeholders are really looking into the quality of the accounting and other things. And the last one is a recent development. The CA Institute has done a wonderful job in terms of setting up forensic accounting and investigation standards, which will go a long way in terms of ensuring that there is some kind of a sense of commonality, and there is a something like where you do some investigations and then you don't do a proper documentation and the chain of custody and other things. So ultimately, when it comes to the scrutiny of courts and litigation, whatever work you would have done, unless it is following a particular standard and methodology, it will not actually really stand into the court of law. So this will really help some of our members who are doing investigations and for forensic accounting engagements. So this will really help them actually. So strategy to combat fraud actually three fronts in terms of, number one is the fraud prevention, and the second one is the fraud detection, and the third one is the fraud response, and the fourth one is the deterrence. All these put together is a strategy to combat fraud. And it is always said it is safer to steal large sums with pen than small sums with gun. So this is a catch. Normally you will hear that the white collar crimes, people can get away with large sums, whereas a dacoit, you cannot really make a good money. So it really gives this opens up our eyes in terms of how is it what white collar criminals are playing around and what are they doing, how to really catch hold of them. So the strategy to combat fraud is discussed in detail. Yeah, so the fraud risk management, the important aspect is, as I mentioned, is organizational culture. So what you see, it is if you see an iceberg, what is under the water and what is above the water. So normally you would have seen this particular slide. So what you see on the top is the vision, strategy, and goals, and all those documented policies and procedures. But when it comes to fraud risk management, what is invisible in the organization and what is actually the perceptions, values, beliefs, they play a critical role. Because we normally, whenever we talk about fraud, we generally talk about this is how the deterrence is there, this is the tone of the top, and this is how the management we look at it from a when it comes to fraud in terms of giving whatever response mechanism. So the people remember these things and then now this is how it happened in the company previously. So these things will not be tolerated. Even a minor things like, just fudging a travel statement or whatever it is. So they know that these are all the precedents in the company, even though some of them are not really articulated as by way of a documented fraud risk policy, but the employees are aware. So they know that this is what happens. So therefore, the invisible organization culture is very, very important from a fraud risk management point of view. Yeah. So the prevention and the prevention plays a very, very important role in the fraud risk management, as a tool. So basically, the independent audit committee, internal audit, who are directly reporting to the independent directors, and the robust internal control systems, these are all very, very important. These are all, actually, they play a very, very important role in terms of the organization tone at the top and the structure, the authority, and those are all things which will actually flow down from top to bottom. And the way the leaders, they walk the talk, and the way the top management sets up the ideals and then they ensure that they follow those ethical standards. These are all very, very important from a fraud risk point of view. When the leader walks the talk, then automatically employees also will understand that. When there is a double standard in terms of there is a bias or double standard, then employees will know that okay, you can get away with this. So these are all the things very important. And some of these preventive mechanism like segregation of duties, maker-checker controls, delegation of authority, access control. These are all preventive internal controls we all know, but they play a very, very important role in terms of prevention of frauds. Because when the systems are all automated, when the systems are all inbuilt in terms of some of these controls, probably, but a large organizations and listed companies, it is probably you have the luxury of implementing some of these things. But the small and medium companies and firms, they may not have the luxury of implementing some of these segregation of duties, maker-checker controls in the ERP environment. So probably when the staff and the employees, there is a scarcity in that, then probably one person may be doing various other activities also. There are also situations where the branch operations or when a remote office, there may be an accountant who may be also doing a payment process, invoice verification, everything you may be doing it. So these are all areas where there is a probable conflict of interest can happen, and people can sometimes they know that this can be misused. It may be misused. So these things are very, very important. And of course, the third one is a code of conduct, and most of the companies may have a documented code of conduct or ethics policy or a fraud risk policy. But some companies may or may not have a documented policy. But this documented policy is very important. People must know that what is a conflict of interest, how is it, what is that he has to do when there is a conflict of interest, and what are the other appropriate behaviors he has to look into. These all things are available in the code of conduct, but what happens is many times it becomes more of a document which is on a form rather than a substance. So many times these policies will run into 30-40 pages, and the employees just simply they will sign it off and then give it whenever there is a requirement to declare the confirmation of that. But what most important is the employees must be aware of these implications, and there must be a training, there must be a awareness programs. So the employees must know that what are the things. For example, a small example, a boss actually takes a loan from his subordinate. It may be a small amount, but whether it is ethically either it is correct, so it may not be really correct. Once he takes a loan from his subordinate, so he can't really question him. So his authority may be compromised. So, but there may be a situation like that. So these things are all may not be documented in a code of conduct or ethics policy. But these things, these are all the examples the employees must be aware of, so that They will know, if, for example, if an employee has got some relative with a vendor, or the vendor has got some relative in the in the company. So those things they need to declare, and they need to take certain proper approvals or whatever it is required, so that there is no subsequent issues. And some of these things followed, like job rotation and all, very much diligently followed in the banking industry and other financial companies and all that. But manufacturing companies, these things may not happen. But for example, a scrapyard in charge. A scrapyard in charge is maybe, you may be doing the same activity for several years. Then there is a possibility that he develops some kind of a familiarity with the scrap vendors. Then there could be a collusion. Or the security guard, he needs to be also rotated in a proper, there should be a roster for him, and then he shouldn't be posted in the same location where he is doing the same work for several years. So these are all the minor things, but these are all the vulnerable areas where the prevention can happen with a possible job rotation and these kind of policies. And the last one is the fraud risk management, and many companies do this fraud risk management assessment. It is similar to any other risk assessment, but it will throw more about the vulnerabilities areas where things can go wrong from a fraud risk point of view. It could be the one what I mentioned, where the employees they are not rotated for a long time. So these are all the minor things, but from a fraud risk point of view, it might it be very important. So these are all things are supposed to be part of the fraud risk assessment, and these are all the preventive mechanisms available. Yeah. So detection. So the whistle mechanism is a very good tool in the hands of the management, and if it is properly implemented and with a spirit and this thing, the whistle mechanism can really act. But what happens is many times the employees are not aware of the whistle mechanism, and they are not aware, and they are also afraid actually. So what happens is when they are afraid, so they may not even like to, because there may be a retaliation. So they may not like to actually inform and highlight those things through a proper systematic manner. So they may like to inform anonymously. So they may not reveal their names or their employee number or whatever it is. So these are all things where the management has to take proper they need to give a kind of comfort to the employees to ensure that there will not be any retaliation, and there will be a suitable protection for the whistleblowers, so that this mechanism will be more effective. Many times we see that there will not be any whistle complaints at all reported in the audit committees. So the audit committees will ask, why is this? How is it there are no complaints reported? So these are all the effectiveness. If there are no complaints reported, it means that there is something going really. The people are really scared. They are not real. Or the company is doing a fantastic job, and there no frauds are happening. So these things are all really, we can't say that. And of course that you would have also seen the way the things are changing in the countries like US, where the whistleblowers are really protected, and there are in fact incentives given by the Securities Exchange Commission there. If somebody comes up with a tip-off and it leads to some kind of penalties and penal actions, a share of that particular penalty will be given to the whistleblowers. And there are also act like Dodd-Frank Act, which also protects the auditors in case he is blowing the whistle, and if there is a retaliation and the termination of an auditor, so the company has to really pay penalties for that. So those kind of penal provisions are there, and unfortunately, I think we have to go a long way in that. So probably things will change in India also. So, and probably you would have also seen, our counterpart, Miss Cynthia Cooper, who was the whistleblower in WorldCom. She blown the whistle, and the WorldCom history you all know. So these things are possible. So probably the whistleblower mechanism has to mature, and the only issue in the whistleblower mechanism is there will be some kind of employees who come up with some frivolous complaints. Then they would like to take some revenge against somebody. So those are all things will be there in the initial phases. But once things mature, I think the system will be more robust. So we need to let the system to mature and then ensure that the people are aware of the systems, and there is a deterrence for the employees who are really giving us some frivolous complaints. So they need to be taken to the task. And detection also, the data analysis, of course, you would have seen with Niraj data analytics, the way he has explained. So I'm not going to get into deep dive into that. So detection can happen also through the data analysis. And the benchmarking is very important, when you have more number of plants, and you can compare various things across the plants, and also with the industry also. So these industry parameters, if you compare, then you will come up with some kind of a red flags. And benchmarking is also important. So like KYC, know your employee, is also very important, detecting the frauds. So what is his lifestyle, what kind of problems he has got. So when you know that an employee behavior, something is very funny, or is living beyond his means or something like that. So these are all the red flags we normally see. So knowing your employee is very important in the detective mechanism. And override of controls also happens. Sometimes there is override of controls, and so we have to see whether this can lead to, for example, there is a override of control by a management. So sometimes these things will happen, for giving some flexibility for some operations and things, but that can be misused by some people. So we need to also ensure that there is no misuse in that. And the most important thing to ponder over, the role of an auditor. And if you look at, you compare with an analyst or an investor. Okay, so you are inside the company and you are looking at the data as an auditor. But look at an analyst. He doesn't look at your data. He doesn't know what is happening. But is whatever the information available in the public domain, he collates the information and he comes up and tells you this is the company what is doing. So as an auditor, I think we have to sometimes wear a hat of an analyst sometimes, or as a hat of investor. What are the parameters the investor looks at a company point of view? And then we have to do some kind of a reverse analysis. How is that an analyst is able to predict certain things? And why is that our internal auditor is not able? Because internal auditor, what happens most of the times is he looks at it at a very narrow level. So he may not look at it at a higher level, at a eagle eye level. So therefore he might miss out certain things. So question is to can we look at as an analyst from outside? How do we look at without any data? And if you see the right side here, the tips are the most important from a fraud detection point of view. I think more than 40% of this thing is actually the source of fraud detection happening through tips. Internal audit and the management reviews are all coming in the next. So therefore, the whistleblower mechanism is very, very important. This is based on the ACFE survey. Yeah, the third one is a response mechanism. So the response mechanism is very, very important, in terms of when the fraud is detected. How is it, who has to handle an investigation? How is it internally it has to be, which agency has to deal with that? Whether HR has to come to know, whether internal audit has to come to know, or the compliance function has to do, or there should be a joint, kind of investigation. So who has to do what? See, normally what happens is that there will be some established processes in company. People know, okay, this kind of fraud, something to do with HR, then it goes to the HR. Something, there is a financial implication, then it comes to internal audit. So these are all understood in the company in a normal way. But if there is a policy, written down policy, or something is available, then people are aware that how to go about, so that there is no confusion. And investigation is an important part of response mechanism. So I'm not going into the details of the investigation. And investigation is a very big subject, and it has also got a lot of skills, and knack of the person is also very important in the investigation. And many people say, by looking at the face of the person and the way he sits, the way he talks, so we can find out what is his his psychology, and whether he's a fraudster or not. So these things are all depends on the person, and a lot of research is done in that. So I'm not really getting into that. But what is more important, in my opinion, is the remediation and the timely action. So that is how actually the employees and the parties, they will come to know that the management really is taking action and the management serious about that. So that can be demonstrated only by way of taking an action and then communicating across the company. Whether some companies they have a formal mechanism, they make a shame and something like that, and then they will display the names of the people. But some companies they will let the communication flow through the informal channels. So these all depends on the organization to organization. But what is more important is there any learning? What we call is a PDCA cycle: plan, do, check, and act. So we must be having some kind of a the processes, documented policies and processes. So after this fraud has happened, is there anything control we need to revisit? Is there anything we need to do some kind of a course correction? So all that is very important. What is the learning from this? Is there anything which has happened in a particular branch or a factory? Whether this can happen in the other factory also or other branch also. So these learnings are very, very important, from a fraud prevention point of view. So whatever we learn from this fraud, so every fraud is unique, and every fraud we deal with is unique. It need not be the same. So therefore, the PDCA cycle is very, very important. And the deterrence will only come when the employees know that no, there will be a action will be taken on them. Therefore, then only they will know that okay, if an employee is terminated or whatever it is based on the investigation, then the message spreads across, and then they all know that this is how the seriousness is taken. If this is not taken seriously by employees, then the culture will become very weak. So therefore the response mechanism is very, very important. So the role of the internal audit, as I mentioned, see, the first and foremost responsibility of protecting an organization is actually the management and the people who are charged with the governance. So it is a responsibility to ensure that there is no fraud in the company, and they have to ensure that there are systems and procedures put in place. So therefore, the role of internal auditor is to find out whether the systems are adequate and they are working properly or they are all effective. And so you can look at based on the risk-based audits, whether those areas, are there any likelihood of certain controls getting compromised, or is there any other probable collusion can happen. So these things, maker checker controls are weak. These things the internal audit can definitely look at it. And we need to have a complete tab on the fraud indicators. So what can go wrong, how it can go wrong. So these indicators can come from the routine data analytics, or it can come through various our site visits, and it can also come from some of the tip-offs. Generally, some employees, if they're comfortable with some of the internal auditors, they will also tell, no, these things are happening. So these fraud indicators, sometimes you need to have a good relationship with some of the auditees so that you will get some kind of a tip-offs also. And so internal audit, like I mentioned, the benchmarking and the data analytics, then the comparison with the industry, and all these things internal auditor can do. And of course, the internal auditor has got a very good role in terms of strengthening the SOPs and the policies. Wherever there is a loopholes in that, they definitely has a role to play in that. And some companies they involve in investigations, some companies they do not involve in investigations. It is either way, it is a convenience of the company. But normally, if it is a senior employee, somebody is, the fraud investigation has to happen, then it's always better that some external agency is hired and some kind of a forensic assignment is, then that will be more, it will have more credibility. But it all depends on the organization to organization. But, what is more important is the internal auditor learns from that and then understands how it can prevent so that it doesn't repeat again. Yeah. So next thing I was mentioning about the corporate governance, the framework. So basically, what is happening is, if you look at some of the surveys and all those things, the frauds, the occupational frauds, in terms of whether it somebody is stealing the cash, or somebody is stealing some inventory, or somebody doing some kind of a fraud at a company level. These employees, some employees claimed more in the reimbursements or travel reimbursements. So these things we are seeing in the day-to-day this thing. But what is the way I look at fraud risk management is from a organization point of view. These things are all because whenever there is something happens, what is the internal auditor is doing? So those questions will come. Therefore, we are all, we have to be on toes, and we have to make sure that those things do not repeat again and again. But what happens when there is a perpetration of fraud done by a management? So that is where the credibility of the profession, and that is where the whole country is grappling with situation currently. In terms of the frauds happening at a much larger scale, where the top managements are involved, where the CFOs or CEOs are involved. So some of these things are really actually rattling the entire structure. Some of these the regulations are coming up in a new the regulations. These are all because some of the frauds what we have seen in the last couple of years, and some of these frauds are repeatedly happening. So therefore I think the forensic framework is very important, and the auditors have to actually look at from a very different perspective in terms of for example, I have taken some of these things from the recent frauds, what is happening, why those frauds are happening at a much higher, large scale. So if you look at some of these frauds in the recent history, the main, the significant portion of subsidiaries are not audited by the main auditors, and they rely on the some of the local auditors, and they sometimes those auditors are not known. So these things are all possible, and some of these companies, they would like to reflect a glossy picture on the earnings, and and then they would like to make sure that they're incentivized for the growth and earnings and other things. So those employees, they will present a glossy picture of the P&L and balance sheet. And some of these frauds, recent history, what you would have seen is there is a multiple layers of multiple layers of companies and groups, structures, related party transactions, and all these things are all complex structures. These complex structures is this is where the auditors, internal auditors, and other auditors, the statutory auditors, not really able to do justice in terms of identifying some of these fraud indicators and off balance sheet items and complex structures. And if you've seen the recent history of one of the largest NBFC, it has got something like 300 to 400 SPVs and companies. So when there is a forensic audit has been done on that, so you come up with the glaring observations and all these things. But these things definitely, the auditor who is doing the audits, definitely you would also know these things are all possible. And a large number of M&As and rollover of loans. And some of these companies are companies are filled with the directors are filled with relatives and friends, and so these are all some of these fraud indicators. And remuneration to promoters and auditors, if it is not commensurate with the growth of the business, then that is also a red flag. And insider buying and dilution of equity, and before major event happens and major takeover happens, there may be some dilution of equity. And see, some of these things actually the analysts and the outsiders are really picking it up. But unfortunately, I think some of these auditors, they are not able to really pick it up. And many a times when the promoters get into non-core businesses, and they get into various other businesses and then divert the funds. And so the end use of money, what is borrowed, not really put into the core business, and it is put into various other sectors and offshore companies. So some of these things can be, these are all the red flags. I think we need to have some kind of a forensic modeling to really find out, whether there are indicators which can collectively tell us that this company, the accounting system is really, there is some kind of a problem in that. So I think from that point of view, I have listed down some of these things, and I will just go through some of the case studies which I've just listed. I think I have some another 10 minutes time. I'll just go through one of this case study. So this is one of the largest housing finance company, and you must have come across this particular fraud story. It is happening for the last. It has come into the light for the last 2 years. And today, if you go back and see, there is a lot of forensic audit is being done, and some of the revealing observations are coming up. And then when we see those observations, we just really can't believe how this could have happened, and why this could have not told by anybody. So these are all very revealing. But what is very interesting is this particular case study. The entire scheme of modus operandi of this entire fraud has been highlighted by one particular investigative journalist. based on the information available in the public domain. That is very, very surprising actually. So January 2019, they came up with a very big story saying that this particular company has done so much of irregularities and involving some 30,000 crores. And this has come up with a investigative journalism. And what is very important is most of the things what they have told subsequently actually was vindicated by the forensic auditor. Out of 30,000 crores money, what they said it is irregularity happened, almost 20,000 crores has been identified by the forensic auditors which were engaged by the some of these lenders. I think that really shows that these some of these red flags what as an auditors we are not able to identify and somebody else is able to identify. It means that I think we need to look at it from a different prism. I think we should think like a fraudster. That is how I think those things can be identified. But if you look at some of these red flags in this particular thing, if you see this graph, they are doing a business of home loans, but over a period of time, the project loans and loan against property almost increased from 11% to almost 35%. It means the core business of home loans is really reducing. It means there is a diversion of funds to the project loans and whatever name they call. So it is so this is a red flag which the story broke in 2019. But if you would have seen the data analysis of the company in the previous years, this was picked up by an investigative journalist. So he has identified that there is a diversion of funds happening to the project loans, and he has looked at a P&L and said there is a upfront fee income is very high. So upfront fee income cannot be more than 5-6%, but whereas this company was reporting upfront fees of almost 25%, over a period of time. It means what is happening is whenever the sanction of loan, so they collect a lot of money as upfront fees and then report it as an income in the P&L. And probably that is the reason why there is a motivation for them to sanction some of these project loans. And unfortunately, the credit rating agencies have been confirming the rating at AAA. Till the time it was actually this particular whistleblower has done that. And after that, there was some issue with the credit liquidity. There was a problem, and the company got into some problems, and they could not repay the loans. After the defaulted on the payment, then overnight the entire credit rating has been changed to the AAA to default category. So this is where the loss of trust of the fiduciaries is happening, and whether it is directors, whether it is credit rating agencies, whether it's regulators, whether it's auditors, everybody has failed as far as this particular case study is concerned. And the forensic auditors have been roped in, and then they've unearthed all those irregularities over a period of time. And then they've also, the CBI has filed case, and all that is happening. But looking at the case study now, it looks what is this? This could have been, some of them are very revealing, and auditors could have actually looked at all these things. But this is where I think more worrying from a professional point of us. Whether it is a occupational fraud, or whether it is somebody stealing small money, or inventory misappropriation, or travel statement misappropriation. So these things are we are more micro level. We are more mercilessly looking at some of these things. But I don't know whether we are looking at mercilessly when it comes to these structured frauds. And this is where the credibility of the profession and the credibility of the regulators and the credibility of the markets participants, all that is at stake. I think this requires the fraud risk management has to be taken to a next level, going beyond the data analytics from a occupational fraud inside the company. How look at it from an analyst point of view? If you are an investor, how do you think? Do you invest your personal money in a company where you see that some of these red flags are there? Okay, from an investor, he looks at, okay, this company there are some red flags are there, some corporate governance issues are there. Let me not put my money in this company. But whereas an auditor, he doesn't, I don't know whether an auditor looks at that way. So I have no other choice, but I have to certify these statements. So therefore, there is a conflict of interest when it comes to an investor as well as an auditor. At best, what can happen is the auditor, if he's not comfortable, he will move away, and then some other auditor will come. But this auditor will never reveal what is going wrong in this company. So this is where I think a lot of churn in the auditors and other things are happening, and the issues are not coming out. This thing. So these frauds will take several years to come out, and that is where we are losing the lenders and the others. They are losing out on the complete thing, and then it is going to the IBC, and then there is a haircut, almost 30,000-40,000 crores of each of these companies are, there is a haircut, and they have to write off these monies. So therefore, I think the forensic modeling and this thing, I think we need to come up with a much more matured models in terms of going beyond the micro level fraud detection to a very higher level, at a structured level. And so this probably this case study, so I'm trying to just explain this way. So second case study, I hope I have another 5 minutes time. So the second case study is about one automotive company. And this company was actually very active, and is very big automotive company which is the global presence, and more than 10-15 countries it is present. And this company actually with the global aspirations, and this thing is expanded last 10 years till 2015. And if you look at some of these red flags which was pointed out by one of the investment advisor, so I picked it from that. And the way, almost for 10 years, it was not making any positive cash flows from operations. Okay, but but whereas it was showing some good profitability, for most of the years. And some of these group companies have similar business structures, and there's an overlap in that. And the disclosures were never made at the consolidated level. And unfortunately, the auditor for such a big group, more than the borrowings of almost 15,000 crores, there was an auditor who is unknown and with a small sized firm in somewhere sitting in Delhi for several years, for almost 10 years, is the same auditor. So these are all some of the red flags. And if you look at, very interestingly, this company's EBITDA was much higher than the industry leader, and the depreciation rates were low. So some of these things, if you look at from a management accounting perspective, these red flags could have been highlighted as a issue. But once this is all story broken, and now we are doing a retrospective analysis. But what is very interesting is I think the auditor has to look at from an investor point of view or an analyst point of view, and then probably you will understand some of these ratios and what are the things going wrong from a structural point of view and business model point of view. Then probably it will help him to blow the whistle. And so this story, I thought I should bring it out, as some of these ratios are all, I feel that the auditor could have looked at, or the whether it is an internal auditor or he could have really understood it at a very macro level. So the micro level looking at things are really not helping many times. So this is what I thought I should also bring these things out. Yeah, so some of these frauds are all, these are all things what we have, they're all, we have seen this in the industry happening, whether it's vendor empanelment, service contracts, scrap disposal, rejected material, civil contracts, employee reimbursements, inventory receivables, and social engineering frauds. So the social engineering frauds are quite rampant nowadays, due to this pandemic. And I'm sure many of us must have observed this. And the fraudsters are becoming more and more active, and there is identity theft, and they keep on sending some phishing mails with different, it's a very similar email IDs. They will send some mails, and then we click it, and then sometimes we get into all these issues. And work from home also, it's contributing to some of these issues. And all put together, I think the awareness on the sorry. Yeah, the awareness levels on the social engineering frauds, I think, needs to be more sensitized to the employees, and these things can be reduced. And if you see the high ticket, the survey here, which shows here, the number of frauds in terms of small items like asset misappropriation and corruption is quite high. But whereas the financial statement fraud in terms of the percentage is only 14%, but the per ticket cost is actually very high compared to those items. So it means the financial statements frauds cannot be done by a lower level people. It has to be somebody at a senior management level or a top management level have to be involved. That is where the public trust is destroyed and the public money is at stake, and where the accounting quality is at poor and the corporate governance issues are really creating a problem. I think we have to also look at that area a little more seriously. So this is what my presentation is all about. So am I on time?
Yes, sir, you're on time. We still have about 30 seconds left, but that's all right.
Thank you.
Moving forward, thank you so much, sir. That was a brilliant presentation on fraud risk and how to mitigate them, and especially the whistleblower part. Going forward, let's now have the query session. Can I request all the panelists to turn on their videos? I will shoot the queries one by one. We have about 14 good queries on the queries list. First of all, the question is for Govinda Saroli. Sir, there's a person who says, while setting up a greenfield project in Indonesia, how did you start? What was the step-by-step procedure map you used to set up the new business?
Yeah, that is a very big story. I don't know whether I'll have time to tell you all that. But one thing I will tell you, the people in Indonesia, they are quite very, very nice to work with them. Very nice people, and they love Indians basically as a culture. It is you can easily adapt with them. And Indonesia and Indians, we have some kind of a connection. I think somewhere in the past. So probably we mix up very well. And so the challenging part is only the language there. So they don't understand the ABCD of your either English or anything. So that is the basic difficulty. So we had to get trained on the language and some of the basic, the protocols, etiquette of the Indonesian culture and all that we understood. And we did a lot of, learning from an etiquette point of view and the language. And then slowly we build up their, you have to work with them and then build their confidence. So that is what I've done.
All right. So the next query is to all the speakers, how has the pandemic affected the internal controls in respect of the organizations that you work for? Briefly share how did each one of you help your respective managements to overcome the increased risks? So can we start with Govinda Saroli, sir, please?
Yeah, so the first and foremost thing is the employee safety and the health is a very, very paramount thing. And the business has to, the business is really suffocated because of various constraints and issues. And the internal audit cannot be a bugbear on the business at this point of time. And we have to go gently and make sure that the business is not really, disturbed by the audit at this point of time. So the remote audits is wherever possible, we could do some remote audits, and wherever it is this thing, all that we could do. But from the audit, from the overall completion and this thing, there is a lot of catching up needs to be done. But the paramount thing is the employee safety and the auditor safety, and all these things are very important. And one more thing, what we have done is as an audit team, what we thought is instead of concentrating the audit team into one particular state, what we thought is let our audit staff, they be from multiple states. So normally we are based out of Tamil Nadu, so majority of our audit staff may be from Tamil Nadu. So what we thought is whenever there is an attrition now, so try to get some people from the, maybe from Andhra, some of them from some other states, so that they can do some audits in their respective states wherever we have branches and other things. So that way we could actually complete some of these audits.
All right. Do any of the other speakers, Niraj sir or Pichai sir, do you wish to contribute more to this?
Yeah. So during pandemic, of course, there was need to relook at the audit program and audit scope. Now, of course, there were changes. First, I think there was a re-profiling of the risk. What are the new risks? So what has happened during pandemic? Technology risk, cyber risk, IT risk has increased. Right now, the way audit was getting done has also changed. You don't have physical people present in your, in front of you or document. So a lot of, again, remote audit has started. Technology-based audit has started. Here, data analytics played a good role, right? So So the different kind of risk, bill, lot of fake bill has started coming to number of companies. People were taking advantage of the situation apart from safety and security risk of people. So yes, there were change, and I think we have learned how to work in this kind of pandemic. People have actually increased and enhanced their skill set of doing remote audit, IT based audit, technology based audit, the way evidences were getting captured earlier. Now, sometimes you have to take help of audit itself, right? Okay, if you are at a warehouse, for example, manufacturing or some site, you verify, send me the document, then you match it with the record, and then you bring your own analytics and then certify it. So the way evidence was getting created has also changed. Just brief, but there are a number of things which has happened and happening around.
Hi, thanks.
I think this particular session would be quite helpful because all we three spoke more about using technology as a lot of indicators and DA and right. So I think this is very helpful for all of them.
Hi, Pichai here. I think we also had a very similar experience, like Govindraju and Niraj mentioned. It also helped us to automate some of the things during this pandemic period. We could do a lot of remote audits, and even we could scan a lot of documents and then look at those documents centrally. And also we could use some local resources available at the zonal level for some of the branch audits. And the one which I mentioned in my discussion also, where the gold audit, which is very crucial from the bank's point of view, we could do actually a lot of quality audit on a video based audit with the branch. So that was one of the innovation we could do because of the thanks to the pandemic actually. So very similar experience from my side also.
But so each of the organizations had to find innovative ways to deal with the pandemic. Going forward, there's a query: how can you deal with scenarios where clients do not have proper systems? And I'm sure this is for smaller clients with a single factory or a small unit where they don't have proper systems. How do you deal with internal audit scenarios there? I'm sure your organizations are huge and they have proper systems in place. But what about the smaller ones where just one factory or a couple of retail outlets? How do you manage those?
I think it's a learning phase for everyone. It is gradual. There is need. They will also learn that they need to invest more on a technology. See what is happening today. They would not have imagined earlier, right? If they are on a lower technology side, either therefore businesses or see everything is now moving on technology. So all schools are closed and people are studying on the Zoom and a lot of these a new startup have come up. So this is going to be a way of life, and this situation will also encourage people to be to invest more on a technology side. Of course, there is a way to look at it. You need to encourage them, educate them for investment, show them the benefits. Why this is important. Probably this is for a smaller company. But there has to be some systematic plan to go about it, right? Again, you can't do all big thing in a one go. I think slowly they need to prioritize and then invest on those technologies. Broadly, can be very specific company wise.
Okay, so I think the next query is also for you, Niraj sir. Please elaborate on the use of Python or R programming in internal or statutory audit. You mentioned Python as a tool.
So Python and R are a coding tool. I don't know how to do it. As I said, probably when we are having another session, I would be one of them who has learned it because I want to learn it. So being an internal auditor, being a forensic guy, I know what I look for, right? This is the kind of analysis I'm looking for. Now I had, as I said, one point of time, 15-20% people in my team were coders. So they used to develop code. So you write SQL, Python, R are the language used for coding the data analytics, and those codes are embedded with your overall IT architecture, and then ClickView, Tableau, all these are Power BI, all these are visualization tool, dashboard, right? So these are the language which my IT system understand, and my coders, and I mean the technology people, they will transfer your requirement through the language into the IT architecture to generate the desired result.
All right, thank you, sir. So the next query is for Pichai, sir. Can you please explain the methodology required to ensure data integrity? I'm sure this is very important in banks and in almost all the organizations, but more important in banks. Please explain the methodology required to ensure data integrity.
Yeah, there are various methods used by the bank, right from the data capture to the data quality. So we do a lot of internal validations. Anyhow, data capture itself there is a maker checker process which is there, and the system which is capturing the data also has a lot of inbuilt validations. And once the data is captured in the system, and we use a lot of techniques to check the quality of the data, whether the required data is available, whether it is the quality is okay. So we use a lot of techniques for that purpose. And a regulator also is looking for that from the data quality point of view. And so those validations are very mandatory.
All right. So the next query is it's a little lengthy. So from your internal audit experience, what could have been the failure of the internal audit function which allowed a repetitive internal financial control failure to pass through for a long time in the PNB scam? So what were the internal audit failures which could not detect the PNB scam?
I think in case of PNB scam, it was mainly the involvement of internal staff in the overall scam, and also there was no straight-through processing between the core banking system and the SWIFT system. So these two are the main failures which I think it resulted in this.
And based on the PNB scam, what changes do you think PNB had to make, or your own bank, Federal Bank, had to make to ensure that similar things don't happen in the future?
So based on that scam, RBI has already picked up that root cause, and then they have already mandated all the banks to integrate the transaction processing system and that is core banking system and the SWIFT system, which most of the banks have already achieved, because that is a mandate which came from the regulator. I think that has resolved, and then I think we'll have to look at more of internal controls to avoid the staff involvement in those frauds. Right now, nobody can go to the SWIFT system and send any message on their own. That is not possible. That is already stopped.
All right.
In all the banks.
All right. So there are a lot of young chartered accountants, including me, who are listening to this webinar. Could all three of you, one by one, guide us or advise us how we can, foray into the internal audit practice? And because a lot of people, especially in small towns, do not see internal audit as a big, scope of work, or people are generally into the traditional practice, and internal audit is not a main part of their, total revenue. So could you give us a little guidance on how people in the smaller cities and towns could, foray into this? One by one. So we'll probably start with Govinda sir.
Yeah, so a very interesting question actually. And see, the first and foremost thing for an internal auditor is the bent of mind. He has to have a passion for the details, and passion for numbers, and passion for controls. So this particular the bent of mind is very much required for internal auditor. And somebody with a different bent of mind, he really cannot get into internal audit. So that is number one. So number two is internal audit scope is really expanding, whether it is small firms or larger firms, and the scope is really there. And the way the Companies Act has really, without anybody's asking, the internal audit has been put into the Companies Act, and the requirements of audit committee and oversight and all that has been put into the Companies Act. But still, the internal audit is a necessary evil is what many companies they see, but they don't see it as a value adding activity. So small companies, when it comes to business, their priorities and the profitability and other things, so they may not really realize the importance of internal audit unless something hits them. Some fraud has happened, or somebody has gone away with cash or inventory or something like that. So it is all risk perception actually. So the risk perception will change from a company to company, and many companies, they have the finance team. The small companies, they will ask the CFO to do all those things. And if the finance department, somebody, if they don't have a that kind of a skill or knowledge on the internal audit, so then those things can get compromised. So it has to evolve, and I think it is a journey everyone has to go through, whether it is a small town or a big town, and this thing, it all depends on the opportunities available and the interest you have on that particular profession.
All right. Thank you, sir. Neeraj sir, your comments on this?
Yeah, many. First of all, I find internal audit very beautiful profession within the chartered accountant. First, it gives you a lot of opportunity to learn through the businesses, right? It's the only department where you have you are fortunate to look at each and every function, right? And then you get the knowledge. What are the challenges? As Govind Raju has pointed out, people think or used to think, I don't see now, that this is a non-value added, because a lot of things we both were responsible, the way we have been looking at and the kind of finding and the way we have been writing reports and pointing out, we are more looked at as a problem finder, right? Now the motive objective has to change. What I used to tell, and this was my learning since beginning, see, my objective and the business owner objective is same, which is growth of a company, profitability of a company, sustainability of a company, right? If both objectives are aligned, there should not be any difference, right? Now, how we align it and how we look together, that is very important. So how we portray ourselves, how we align with the business, what kind of audit we are doing, how we are giving the report. Are we just looking as a problem finder, or we are talking about the solution? Do we partner with the business, right? How do we write report? There has to be some kind of empathy. I used to be very known to be a very tough one, right? Crossing the other people's path and a lot of those things. But this is how gradually we have learned. Mantra for me always was in the since beginning, since my article shape was, apart from control, right? If I can find out two business point in each and every report, which will actually interest business, why they will look at and they will sit down with me. If we work with that set of mind, apart from being an inquisitive mind, process driven mind, go deeper, understanding of a problem, please understand problem and root cause, all those are perfect. But where is your business sense? What you are bringing on the table? Are we looking at very nitty small things, or we are giving a big picture also, right? So how you portray yourself, what kind of value add you do, the kind of data analytics we are doing, right? The technology we are talking about, the kind of questions we are asking, discussing, all these are going to help. Very good career. This is going to grow. People are understanding the importance of this particular function. And I wish all of you a very good future in internal audit.
Thank you so much, sir. Pichai sir, your remarks on this?
Yeah, I think most of the points were covered. I just wanted to add a few points. I think the internal auditor, the members, I think they should look at, they should have a different view. As Govinda mentioned, the bent of mind, passion. Other than that, they should be able to look at, to identify the risks which are involved, and they should have a basic understanding of the business which the organization is, into. And also they should have a proper understanding of the regulations which are related to their business. And if these two are there, then they should also have a technology oriented mindset, which is very important in the current situation. So these are the additional points I just wanted to add.
All right. So the last query is, unless more queries come up, how do you deal with negative feedback or difficult auditees? With an example. So a situation where you're trying to get data from the client, but the client is not giving the data or not assisting. How do you deal it within your organizations? Where you are trying to get data from one of your teams, and you're not getting it.
Yeah, so this is a professional hazard, and like Niraj mentioned, no. So end of the day, you will not get all the auditees and all the people at the same level of cooperation and these things when you have an organization with so many auditees you're working with, you may probably find some 5% or 10% of the auditees may not really transparent or may not be cooperative or may not really come up to your expectation or in terms of whatever it is. But the most important is, I think, the remaining 95% of the people whom you get the cooperation and this thing. That is where you start with partnering with them and then give them the comfort and confidence that you are a partner and partner in business and you are not a policeman or this thing. And what happens is, see, certain processes are all actually audited quite regularly, and people are quite comfortable with their processes. But whenever you get into some new processes and the new areas, then probably you will get into some kind of a frigid reaction from that kind of a people. But I think these things will evolve, and over a period of time, you will, you may not have an ideal situation of everybody cooperating with you 100%. But more importantly is you look at the people who are cooperating with you and how you are helping them out, and then let the message spread that the internal audit is there only to support you. Once that spreads, I think that particular positive the word of mouth probably will help others also to realize that the internal audit is here to really to help the business. So I think this is how we have to go forward. But as far as some areas we still find that this is a very critical area and we are not getting cooperation, then we need to escalate and then make sure that particular area is really audited, and somebody is actually defending himself and is not really cooperating. There could be something fishy may be going on there also. So it could be that reason also. We cannot ignore that. So we have to use our judgment and see whether we have to escalate the issue or we have to handle it with soft gloves. So these things we have, it is a professional judgment and depends on the area and criticality and the risks which have happened in that area, and all that we have to see. That's all.
But I think you've explained it beautifully, and I'm not sure if others wish to add. Just in case, Niraj sir or Pichai sir, do you wish to add anything on this?
I think what he mentioned is correct. The compliance culture of the organization is very important, and also the management support. These two will help us to take care of these difficult situations.
I think there is one say in Hindi, Saam Dand Ved Sabana Chi auditor ko. There is way, and there are some very beautiful way what I did, try to generate some kind of dashboard, right, and send it to all the process owner management. I give you an example. Let's say I have 100 open audit, right, and particular department is running at 90% compliance, someone 80, 70, 30. Send it to everyone dashboard. The people will be able to find out where is the problem, right? So these are one of some small trick. Send your audit status to a group or the management. They will be able to figure out where is the problem. Apart from these are very soft way of apart from what Raju and Malingam had said, right? So these are some, and of course you need to have some kind of mentor also within department. Make some friends also. Somebody will talk positive about you to the person who is not helping you, right? So all these things will work.
All right, so that was it from the queries session. Just in case you have any concluding remarks, Govinda sir. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and close this.
Yeah. So I think I must compliment the work I think your team and Mr. Nandaji is doing. From the internal accounting standards board point of view, I think I would first of all compliment and say that I think I've also got the opportunity to see some of your previous sessions as well. The really high class sessions happening, and the way the technology and others people are demonstrating it, really inquisitive, and we all feel excited about it. Some of these sessions, and people are really coming forward with very honest and very enthusiastic way. People are contributing and sharing the knowledge. I think each session everyone brings out with something different and unique, and this thing, and we all have to learn, and each person has some competency and edge over others. So probably we have to work together and learn from each other. Collectively, probably we would have got some 70, 80 years of experience put together. So we all have to, the others will get benefit out of that. And I think these sessions are really important, and whatever it may be the subject. So the subject and this thing may not be really important, but the way it is brought to our this thing, the way we share our insights and this thing, I think that is very important in my opinion. And so I think you guys are doing a fantastic job. So keep doing it.
Thank you so much, sir. Niraj sir, over to you. Any concluding remarks?
I completely echo my voice with Mr. Raju. What he said, I think very insightful session for me. Also, a lot of learning from Mr. Nanda, Mr. Raju, Mr. Mahalingam. I think good work being done. The kind of passion shown by you people and Mr. Nanda to organize it regularly and coming up with a very versatile and the new concepts and session. There's a new area of audit, bit fraud, technology, banking. Earlier also, I was part of a couple of sessions. So good one, and continue doing it. Thank you very much. Good way of sharpening our own skill also while talking to so many people here and connecting with many young professionals. If I can touch upon their way of working and life. Thank
Right,
you.
sir.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for the opportunity. I think this is my first session, and I think it was very informative, and actually I could learn a lot of things from this session. And it's very interesting to see, the perspective from different industries. It's not, one industry. It's from different industries. I think it will be a great learning process for the members and the youngsters. It would have been a great opportunity for them also. Thanks a lot again for the opportunity for me. Thank you.
All right, sir. Now it's time for me to propose a vote of thanks to this session. Let me be very honest. I'm not a very big fan of internal audits, but this was a totally mesmerizing session. All three of you did great justice to your topic, and I can see the comments of people on this portal, and there's so many praises for all three of you. People have loved your presentations and your way of style for all three of you, not just for any one of you. And kindly share your PPTs with the board, and they'll be circulating it to all the members. And I, on behalf of Internal Audit Standard Boards and the Bhiwani branch, I propose a very healthy vote of thanks, and I request all of you to stay safe and take care of yourselves and families, and don't step out of your house as long as it's not very urgent. Thank you so much to all the members. We had about 3,000 members joining in today. It was a great pleasure hosting this, moderating this session for all of you, and I hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.